Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Cedar.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, June 30th, 2020. My name is Sam Cedar. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps and steps and steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal, the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program, the nation's legal correspondent, Elie Mystal, on SCOTUS rulings handed down today, yesterday, over the past couple of days. Also on the program, Trump was given written reports of supposed Russian-Afghan bounties months ago. And not so great a news out of Kentucky. The results are in. It appears that Charles Booker has lost to Amy McGrath. Close, but no cigar. Meanwhile, Don lights on Marblehead. Susan Collins had no idea Brett Kavanaugh was anti-choice. No idea. We are weeks away from millions expecting eviction notices. And Elizabeth Warren intros a nationwide eviction moratorium bill in the Senate. Meanwhile, New York City may pause its reopening as big budgets agreed to in the wake of coronavirus shortfalls. Speaking of which, the government developed a coronavirus treatment now in private hands, and because so, it's going to cost a fortune. Jacksonville now requiring masks as the RNC approaches. China asserts new security powers over Hong Kong, and YouTube bans hate speech. Hate speechers, I guess, Richard Spencer, Stefan Molyneux, and David Duke. And, of course, Trump's purely accidental, totally benign white power tweet, which couldn't be reversed for hours or deleted because. Lastly, rest in peace, Carl Reiner, age 98. All this and more on today's program. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the program. I'm feeling a little tired today. We are a couple of days away from our vacation. I need it bad. I'm not going to lie to you. I just forgot that I had to do the AM Quickie this morning, so we were out a little bit late for that. Apologies. Thanks for joining us today. Rest in peace, Carl Reiner. Got to say, I never had any. I had some maybe comedic heroes. He was not necessarily one of them. Although I will say he directed some movies that I absolutely loved as a kid, and to the extent that I have a comedic sensibility, which I think many would argue is arguable. Things like those Steve Martin movies, Man with Two Brains, Jerk, All of Me, big part of it, and The 2,000-Year-Old Man, inspiration for some of the work that John Benjamin and I did back in the day. Used to listen to some of that stuff. And I appreciated how much he liked to crap on Donald Trump up until the day he died, apparently. So, but rest in peace, Carl Reiner. A lot of our comedy He did a lot of the Sid Caesar stuff. I don't think he was on the Laugh-In, but he did a lot of the Sid Caesar stuff, I think, and a lot of the comedy that we have today in some way. You know, he was. You can find a lot of the genetic strain was from Reiner, and of course the Dick Van Dyke Show, which I watched a ton of as a kid. So rest in peace. And moving on, 98. We should all be so lucky, as far as I'm concerned. At this point, who knows? Who knows what's going on? The coronavirus, of course, exploding across the country. And does not appear to be any real attempts to deal with this. You know, you've got, Texas is now starting to say we need to wear masks. We're going to shut down the bars and this and that. A little bit late. We will know really, what we're looking at now are people who got infected 2 to 3, 4 weeks ago in terms of the data. So, do the math. You can just look at the rate of progress. And the real question in terms of deaths, which is not to undersell, how debilitating this disease is, even if you don't die from it. The real question in terms of deaths will be two-part. One is, will it cross over into an older age cohort? Right now, the average age of these outbreaks seem to be in the mid-30s. Will it cross over? If that number gets 10 years older, that the average age is in the mid-40s, we're going to have a problem with fatalities. And we're also going to have a problem with fatalities if these hospitals are just not capable of dealing with the number of patients they're getting. And we will see. It does not, contact tracing, all that, or it just seems to be out the window. And in some places, there is a sense that you should wear a mask. In other places, it's just whatever. I don't know. We have, and on top of that, and this is going to be the story, a month from now, we're going to be talking about a lot more. 3 or 4 weeks from now, we're going to talk a lot more. We have a tremendous number of people who are going to be evicted or receive evicted notices come the end of July, when the first round of CARES Act, the moratorium and the sort of the patchwork of moratoriums ends. Warren introduced a bill in the Senate, or has unveiled one that would just be a moratorium for a year. Still owe the money. So a lot of people, what happened is they'll get evicted and they'll have this on their record. They're not going to be able to pay it back. I mean, how do you pay it back after a year? But at the very least, we'd have the moratorium in place until the end of this, theoretically. What we really should be doing is figure out ways to make, at the very least, small renters whole on behalf of rentors whole on the behalf of the rentees, and some mortgage assistance. I mean, we're going to need more aid. And we're starting to see now these massive cuts in budgets in cities and states that are going to impact all sorts of social services across the board, including education. So this is going to be a mess, folks. It's going to be a real mess, and it's going to get worse. I guess I'm not in a great mood today. But there's this. Now, I'm of different minds about this, because I got to say that I think the proper way, I don't know if it's true that Russia was paying bounties to Afghani militants to encourage them to disrupt the peace process with the Taliban by attacking us, right? I mean, that's the oldest game in the book. Trying to do a peace process. One side instigates something, or a third party instigates something to screw up the process. Now, in an alternate universe where we didn't have Donald Trump as president, assuming this is correct, he would have gotten notified of this in February. Maybe in February or March, he would have said, we're getting reports that Russia is interfering. I have sent word to them. They should stop doing this. It will not preclude us. We are resolute in our decisions as to our disposition in Afghanistan. And none of this child's play by Russia will make any difference. Now, of course, we don't have that president. We're not in an alternate universe. And so it turns into a crap show where he doesn't pay any attention to it or ignores it, or we don't know. But here is Ainsley Earhart explaining to us, Steve Doocy explaining to us, maybe he just didn't know about it.
Well, I mean, Michael Waltz also went on to say that we've known for years that Russia has supported the Taliban through arms. The Iranians have supported the Taliban with cash and equipment and training. Some of their soldiers were found with weapons that were from Iran. So have the Pakistanis. So this is not anything new. The point here is, if it's not verified by our 16 intelligence agencies, that's their job. That's what they do. It doesn't get to the president's desk. The president, he has to make decisions based on intel that is in front of him. And if he's not briefed on it, then he doesn't know about it. Right. But if he is briefed on it, then he can act on it. Well, so that's the danger here, Steve, that if it's not true and the president acts, then that causes a lot of trouble. Well, so we want to be safe here.
According to the New York Times, it was in his presidential daily briefing on February 27th.
But he doesn't. All presidents don't read all of their briefings.
Right. A guy comes in and essentially tells the president what is in it. And so it might have been printed in it. Doesn't mean he actually heard about it, because you've got to figure, if the president had heard that was going on, he would have done something about it. All right.
Right. You got to figure that. It's not like Donald Trump would be sloughing off. Yeah, you got to figure that. You know, look, presidents don't all read their briefings. That's just the way it goes, folks. You know, he may miss things. Sometimes they read it to him and he just dozing off. This episode brought to you by Magic Spoon. As you know, breakfast cereal, probably one of the best parts of growing up as a kid. You get the cereal, it's sweet, it's delicious, bunch of different flavors, little characters on the box. But as an adult, you realize you don't want to eat all that sugar. You don't want to drink that milk that's been doused in sugar. Magic Spoon is a new cereal company. It's discovered the way to recreate your favorite childhood cereals with zero sugar. They got 12 grams of protein, 3 grams of net grams of carbs in each serving. Magic Spoon offers 4 flavors based on the all-time classics: cocoa, fruity, frosted, and blueberry, plus a variety pack that lets you try them all. They've recreated the taste and the texture of those classic sugary cereals, but it tastes so incredible you will not know that it's healthy. It's keto friendly, it's gluten free, it's grain free, it's soy free, it's low carb, and it's GMO free. Look, I'll be honest with you. I try to eat eggs and stuff like that more breakfast than not, but now twice a day I'm eating this Magic Spoon because my kids eat it every day. Saul loves it. And every day he's like, I can't believe there's no sugar in this. It's monk fruit. I don't know how they do it. But it's delicious. For me, I'm a cocoa guy. Saul, fruity. Till we run out of the fruity. Then he moves to frosted, then to blueberry, then around to cocoa. I don't understand it. For me, it's like chocolate. This stuff is delicious. Honestly, we eat it every day in this house. Go to magicspoon.com/Majority Report. Grab a variety pack. Try it today. Use the promo code Majority Report at checkout. You get free shipping. Magic Spoon, so confident in their product, it's backed with a 100% happiness guarantee. So if you don't like it for any reason, they refund you. No questions asked. magicspoon.com/Majority Report. Code Majority Report for free shipping. Check it out, folks. It is Saul approved. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Elie Mystal. We'll be talking about the Supreme Court hearings that we've been hearing about, or rulings, I should say. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report on the phone. It is a pleasure to welcome back to the program Elie Mystal. He is the justice correspondent for The Nation magazine. Elie, welcome back to the program.
Thanks so much for having me, Sam. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. I just watching the country meltdown, and hoping that we just melt into a pool that can recoagulate. With any luck in the future. But
while the country wonders if Donald Trump can read his briefings, I'm over here reading the briefings coming out of First Street with the Supreme Court, and it has been a fascinating couple of weeks over there.
I'll tell you something. The other day, my sister was listening to NPR or something, which I've asked her not to do, but she heard Michael Steele claim that he thinks conservatives are going to be surprised by John Roberts when it comes to the abortion case and to maybe the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And these are the two big cases that came out yesterday. I don't even know what day it is. Okay, I guess it was yesterday.
Yeah, it's one day, but yesterday.
Yes, and we also had a ruling today on Espinoza versus Montana Department of Revenue. Maybe we have a chance to talk about that in a moment, but the two big ones so far this week are the case about abortion, June Medical, and this one is like all right. You characterized it. You said just a reminder. John Roberts is not your friend. Explain to us why John Roberts is not our friend, and maybe we should just start with what are trap laws.
Yeah, so let's understand what's happening here in this abortion case. A trap law is a kind of conservative invention. They've realized that making a frontal attack on abortion rights, making a frontal attack on Roe v. Wade is both difficult and unnecessary. Why try to outlaw the right to an abortion when you can simply make it impossible for anybody to get an abortion because you've outlawed all the abortion services providers? And these are what trap laws do. They kind of go after not the woman who wants to exercise her bodily autonomy, but the doctor who provides the service, right? So the law in Louisiana at issue in June Medical was this issue of whether or not an abortion services provider had to have admitting privileges in nearby hospitals. And when you make that the requirement, what you end up doing in a lot of these states is essentially making it impossible for people to provide abortion services. That was the law at issue in the case that was decided yesterday. The thing is that Texas had almost an identical law that was struck down by the Supreme Court in 2016. That case was called Whole Woman's Health. So what the case really was about yesterday was whether or not this law that the court struck down in 2016 suddenly was okay. The only reasons conservatives thought that the law that wasn't okay in 2016 would be okay in 2020 is because, well, what's happened between 2016 and 2020? Neil Gorsuch replaced Merrick Garland, who was supposed to replace Antonin Scalia, and Brett Kavanaugh replaced Anthony Kennedy. Though that's the only change. Conservatives thought they had finally enough votes at the Supreme Court to overturn recent Supreme Court precedent, and Roberts basically just said no, right? And this is, when you look at this from 30,000 feet, John Roberts did not say he supports a woman's right to choose. He did not change his opinion about the legality of the trap law. Roberts was in dissent in 2016 with the Texas trap law. He hasn't changed his mind. He simply said, look, y'all, the laws are the same. We just ruled on it. And Roberts was willing to follow precedent from his own court about whether or not the law was constitutional. That's all that happened.
And we should say, and I just want so the people know, a trap law is a targeted restriction on abortion providers. And my understanding too, from like reading contemporaneous accounts of the oral arguments, that Roberts started out more enthusiastic and then was just like, ugh, this is the exact same case. And my understanding is that it was argued poorly too. There was no, theory as to why this precedent should be overturned 3 years later. And my understanding is also that the only reason why they took this case was because an appellate court had ruled in such a way that was, created a conflict between what the Supreme Court had said in whole health and now. And so there was sort of an obligation to deal with it. But we should also, and maybe you should also explain this dynamic. These cases, I mean, sort of they're lagging indicators on some level, right? Like the decision to make this case, to bring this case was several years ago. And so they're not necessarily, they may not have even been aware of like what whole health would have been ruled at that point, or has this been after the fact and they're just trying to go at it again because they know the court makeup was different?
Yeah, I think in this particular situation, and you're right to say generally cases are lagging indicators, but not this one. This one was directed because they put Kavanaugh on the court. Without getting too much into the weeds of the procedural history here, what happened was that Whole Women's Health says that the Texas law is unconstitutional. Okay. Then the Fifth Circuit, which controls Texas, Louisiana, a couple other southern states, is one of the most conservative lower courts in the nation, gets this Louisiana law that's substantially similar to the Texas law, right? At that point, what that lower court should have done was to reject the Louisiana law. But that case came in front of the lower circuit just as Kennedy announced his retirement, just as Brett Kavanaugh was being nominated and eventually confirmed to the Supreme Court. And so what the lower court did, what the Fifth Circuit did, was basically ignore recent Supreme Court precedent and say, oh, the Louisiana law is fine. And I believe that they did that only because they knew Kavanaugh was about to be on the court, providing them what they had hoped would be a fifth conservative justice to overturn this ruling. The conservatives, and this is part of what I tried to explain in The Nation today in my piece about John Roberts. If you step back to 30,000 feet, people need to understand just how ridiculous the conservative legal theories are at this point in our history. They are wackadoodle, off-the-wall legal theories. When you say that Roberts kind of got exasperated during the oral arguments of this case and kind of threw up his hands, it's because he kept asking, like, is there any legitimate reason why the Louisiana law is different than the Texas law? And the lawyers had nothing. They weren't even trying to argue that the laws were different. They were just trying to like nod, wink. Hey, don't we know that we got the five conservatives now? Isn't it going to be good? Like that was their actual argument, right? That's why Roberts has seemed in recent weeks to be more moderate, right? It's not that he's becoming a liberal. It's not that he's becoming more moderate. It's that conservative arguments are so off the walls, crazy pants, that Roberts like, I can't do this, y'all.
Well, it's not just that Roberts is, it's his personal pride as an attorney. Roberts has to be aware that there's a growing movement. Like people are already talking about getting rid of the filibuster in the legislature, in the Senate. And, we're hearing this from Democratic senators. We're hearing this from Democratic candidates running for Senate. So there appears to be a strong will to do that. And there has been a greater conversation about court packing in this past, a year or two, particularly following the wake of Garland, that Roberts has to be aware that he can't give fuel to this movement to reform the Supreme Court justices, right? I mean, he's got to be, this isn't just about him looking at himself in the mirror. It's about him maintaining his power on the court.
Roberts seems to me to be the only conservative who remembers that Donald Trump is not going to be president forever, right? Like he seems to be the only one that has this idea that, like, guys, we're going to be here for like 20 years. Trump is going to be gone soon, if not literally like in a couple of months. then even if it takes another 4 years, Trump is going to be gone, but the court will still be here. And what kind of court do we want? What Roberts wants is a court that is able to do the work of defending the Republican agenda without these kind of attacks that are increasingly coming from the left and from liberals. I've written a 3,000-word piece on how we need to pack the court, right? There is much more kind of liberal interest in court packing now than there ever has been before. I mean, you'd have to literally go all the way back to FDR to get this kind of progressive interest in the issue. And I think you're absolutely right to say that Roberts notices that and wants to make sure that the court is seen as a legitimate body and not simply an enforcement wing of the Republican Party. That doesn't mean that Roberts is a moderate. It doesn't mean that he's not Republican. Roberts wants to, and I've said this before, Sam, but Roberts' goal is to bend the law towards the Republican agenda as much as possible without breaking it. That he cares about breaking it makes him different from Brett Kavanaugh, for instance.
Right. Or he's also got he's just in a different position because it reflects a lot on him as well. But yes, he's got that agenda. And I will also add this. Let me just refine your point. The thing that I've noticed, having spoken to, because the 2000 election for me was just was monumental. And I have been tracking lawyers on this for 20 years. And, I have never seen, it's not just the left or liberals or whatnot. It is lawyers. It's the legal profession is at its peak, it seems to me, certainly in my adult lifetime, in awareness that in terms of cynicism and skepticism towards the Supreme Court and seeing it less as the legal institution that lawyers are raised to believe that it is, and are seeing it more as a like you say, a wing of the Republican Party. And I think that Roberts has to be aware of that he's just looking at this and going we're leaving too big a target here. If we reverse a ruling that we did 3 or 4 years ago, I mean, that's nuts.
You can draw a straight line from Bush v. Gore in 2000 to the Merrick Garland confirmation fiasco to the appointment of the confirmation of an alleged attempted rapist to the Muslim ban. And I think that that linear progression is what has, at least in my, and I agree with you, Sam, at least from where I sit, has changed even how other lawyers, other institutionalists talk and understand about the Supreme Court. After Bush v. Gore, there were still a lot of people who would argue that the court was not a politicized institution, this was a random case, blah, 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 right? But after everything that's happened since Bush v. Gore, and especially after what we saw with Mitch McConnell blocking Merrick Garland, the argument that the court is a apolitical institution simply is facially ridiculous now, right? And nobody with credibility can make that case now, even within the legal profession. And so that has, I think, really changed. That started to change how lawyers talk about the court. And it's also, from where I sit, started to change how the media talks about the court. And that's almost as important as how the lawyers talk about it, right? I mean, more important than how the lawyers talk about it, right? Because the media is how, most people are not like me and sitting down and reading, 90-page Supreme Court decisions. They're getting their court news from, talking heads, analyzing and interpreting the decisions for them. And what we've seen, especially in the past 3-4 years, is even people in the media start to cover the courts more like they cover Congress or they cover the president, understanding the court is a political branch of government just like the other two. As that starts to happen, the I just call balls and strikes-ness that Roberts wants to cling to becomes more and more facially ridiculous.
I am going to use that term. I call balls and strike-ness. I like that. Okay, so and we should just one other thing to add on this specific case that he basically says. I mean, he lays out essentially, and he's done this in other cases. It appears to me, he lays out the roadmap to and basically puts out the clarion call. We want a case that will take Casey, follow the Casey route in terms of dealing with abortion, right?
Yeah, he's. This case was not a protection of abortion rights so much as it was a warning for how abortion rights can be taken away in the future. When Roberts mentions Planned Parenthood v. Casey, people need to understand Planned Parenthood v. Casey is the controlling abortion decision in this country. It's not Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade got mollified into Planned Parenthood v. Casey. And Planned Parenthood v. Casey sets out basically a complicated, convoluted set of tests that basically tell us when the government is allowed to restrict the abortion right. Roberts is saying, let's look at that case again. Let somebody bring me a case that looks to overturn Casey, and we can get this thing done. Is what he's saying in that opinion. And it's worth noting. I personally believe that what the conservatives are waiting for, the kind of conservative legal bar is waiting for Ruth Bader Ginsburg to pass away. They want to replace her with a woman, either Amy Coney Barrett or, God forbid, Naomi Rao, and then have that conservative woman write the decision overturning abortion. Like, that's their plan, and that plan will succeed if Trump wins re-election. Like, that is their plan. That's what's going to happen. And November 3rd is the last best hope to stop that from happening.
Right. Well, Roberts wants to be the sixth vote on this, on the overturning of that right of abortion.
Exactly.
Okay. So
they don't want to do it 5-4, and they don't want to do it 5-4, 5 men against the 3 women who are on the court.
Right. Just Ruth Bader Ginsburg, hang in there. Breyer, hang in there. Everybody, hang in there. A couple more months. You get one more bite at the apple. All right. Let's move to the other big one yesterday. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. It was a challenge to the provision that the president, that the director of the CFPB could only be fired for cause, did not serve at the whim of the president, as it were. The argument was that's unconstitutional and the whole agency needs to go down the toilet. But that didn't happen.
Yeah, Roberts split the baby here. And to be clear, I hate this decision. I think it's mainline constitutional to write a law that protects the agency director from the whim of the president. We have that in lots of other situations, right? We have it for the FBI. We have it for the Federal Reserve. Like every person who works in the government should not be fireable by the president when he goes on a Twitter rant. Like that would be better. But Roberts ruled, along with the conservatives, that the way the CFPB was written to make its director, again, unfireable but for cause, was an unconstitutional violation of the separation of powers and the appointments clause of the presidency, which basically means that Trump can and does fire whoever he wants, whenever he wants, for whatever reason he wants, right? That decision that kind of guts the CFPB also is what Trump is going to use to now put pressure on Fed Chair Jerome Powell. It is a one-to-one connection in terms of if Trump can do this to the CFPB, that means he can also fire Jerome Powell, which means that he can politically pressure Jerome Powell into making monetary decisions that Trump likes. It means that he could fire FBI Director Chris Wray, just like he fired FBI Director James Comey. Like this has a really negative effect on anybody's ability who works in government to exist in government without taking Donald Trump's loyalty pledge. On the other hand, the conservatives, again, going for the most wackadoodle, off-the-wall theory they could, didn't just want to say that firing the director was unconstitutional. They wanted to say that because firing director, making the director unfireable, was unconstitutional, that the entire agency was unconstitutional, which again is just crazy talk. It makes no sense. And Roberts did not go along with that. He said no. The issue with the director is what's legally called severable. That means it can be distinguished from problems with the organization in general, which means they can kind of correct the director issue without scuttling the entire agency, which is a mainline, obvious decision that for some reason conservatives are angry about because they're crazy now.
Well, had the court found that the independence of the director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is essential to the creation of this agency, it would impart enough, it seems to me it would impart enough importance to the agency in and of itself that would then make it absolutely necessary for it to be independent, right? Like it was sort of like it's circular. If you're saying that the whole agency is dependent upon the independence of this agency, you're basically saying, and then strike that down as unconstitutional. You're basically saying like Congress has no authority to create anything. It seems to me.
Exactly. Which is why their theory was a bit off. Which is why the conservative theory was off the wall, right? And again, I think Roberts got it wrong here. I think the conservatives are wrong. I think that it is in keeping with constitutional principles for Congress to create an agency under the executive branch, appointed by the executive branch, that can't be fired by the executive branch every time Trump, doesn't like somebody's Twitter feed.
So what does this do to things like terms for the National Labor Relations Board?
Exactly. It scuttles those, right? It potential. There are so many, and the way they'll get around and a lot the Labor Relations Board is that Roberts did try to be cute, where he said because it was a single director as opposed to a panel of directors, that's why it was a separation of powers issue, leaving open the possibility that if you have a panel of directors, you can protect them from being fired, except for cause. Like it's a little bit kind of like too cute by half. I think the import here is that this decision gives Donald Trump and truly any future president kind of unmitigated firing powers for people in the executive branch, which I think Donald Trump proves that's how dangerous that is. That means that the president can kind of force everybody who works in government to swear loyalty to the president if they want their job, which is not good government. And why I think the conservatives are wrong, but they get to be on the Supreme Court, and I'm here talking to you.
I just don't understand like it's a bizarre. How is there a legal principle that one person can't serve, it can't be fired for cause, but if you have multiple people, they're protected? Like, how is that a constitutional principle?
He made it up, Sam. He made it up. It's what they do sometimes. He made up a different. He interpreted separation of powers in such a way as to make up a distinction between a single head versus a board of directors.
All right,
I don't know what to tell you.
Okay, listen. So we got 2 minutes. I know I know you got a hard out here. Let me ask you this: as someone who is called for court packing, okay, and as someone who obviously you spend I don't know how much time, but I would imagine a certain amount of time talking to folks in the legal community, because I'm convinced that we're hearing more of that in the media because it's softened. That prospect is like that perspective has changed in the legal community. Is this going to be effective? Is this ruling, is the Gorsuch ruling the other day, is this going to be effective in sort of like letting the air out of that reform the court tire?
I think so, and I think really they won this battle when Biden became the nominee. Biden, of all of the Democrats running, Biden was the least amenable to court packing. Of all the Democrats running, I think Biden was one of the least kind of aware of the Supreme Court, which is odd, given that Biden used to be the head of the Senate Judiciary Committee. But he was, I think, of all the possible Democratic nominees, Biden was kind of the worst on this on this issue. He believes in a version of the Supreme Court that has not existed certainly since Bush v. Gore, and probably hasn't legitimately existed since sometime in the 70s, right? If you ask Biden what he thinks of a nominee, he thinks that we should nominate good justices. I don't really know what that means, but he thinks they should be good. Great, Joe. He's the only one who has seriously resurfaced the idea of renominating Merrick Garland, which would be a huge mistake. He's not the guy to push for, especially when you realize that to get court packing, you need such a massive kind of popular support. He's not the standard bearer. He's not the leader of that movement. He's never going to be the leader of that movement. And so I think that Roberts won that battle with Biden. That said, just because I need to say this because people sometimes misinterpret my about Biden. A Biden judge is 100,011 billion times better than a Trump judge. There is no comparison, okay? There is no comparison to the kind of, even if Biden were to renominate Merrick Garland, there is no comparison between the kind of justice Merrick Garland would be versus the kind of justice Naomi Rao would be, which is who Trump might nominate if he gets reelected, right? Like you can't, I say this to people who are disappointed with Biden all the time. There is not a thing that you want if you are left of center that can survive the Supreme Court being 7-2 conservatives, right? Ruth Bader Ginsburg is 87 years old. Stephen Breyer is 81 years old. If Trump wins again, Trump could get 2 more Supreme Court appointments. Nothing survives. Not gun rights, not climate change. Nothing survives a 7-2 court. So Biden winning and nominating his centrist milquetoast justices would be loads better than Trump winning and appointing another couple of hardcore arch conservative justices.
We are simpatico on that point, Elie. I think my audience knows that. Elie Mystal, thank you so much for your time today. Justice correspondent at The Nation magazine. Always a pleasure. Really appreciate you making the time today.
Thank you, Sam. Have a nice one.
You too. All right, folks. There you have it. We got a couple more rulings that are coming. I guess it's going to go into July. I mean, there could be more today. There was actually a ruling today, which we did not get to. The Espinoza, I think it was, ruling, which basically held that the application of Montana's Constitution no aid provision to a state program providing tuition assistance to parents who send their children to private schools discriminated against religious schools. So this is basically a Betsy DeVos wet dream. The idea is you'll recall that Betsy DeVos said years ago in an interview, and maybe it was her husband, but they were being interviewed together. They don't have a problem with public education. They have a problem with public schools. So what they want is they want the government to collect the money in taxation, and then they want to be able to distribute it to parochial schools. And so this is basically means that state program that provides tuition assistance to parents who send their kids to private schools can do so on, they can get aid from the state to do so. And I guess there was another case, U.S. Patent and Trademark Office versus Booking.com. The justice held that a term-styled generic.com is a generic name for a class of goods and thus ineligible for federal trademark protection only if the term that has that meaning to consumers. So I guess maybe Booking.com is not trademarkable. I'm not sure. I'm not as worried about that. Folks, that is our fun half, our free half for the day. Just a reminder, you can support this show by doing a myriad of things, but the pantheon of support of the show, becoming a member, is the highest of the high. And when you become a member, you get extra content every day. You also get the ability to walk around saying, like, I'm a member of the Majority Report. What's wrong with you? You can do so at jointhemajorityreport.com. And when you do, you get the show commercial free. Still, if you look in the show description, you'll still see the deals that we have for like Magic cereal today, which, like I say, I really enjoy the cereal. My kids love it. I just try not to eat that much cereal because in the morning I need to do, like for me, like I cannot have, everything has to be completely habitual or I just get overwhelmed. Maybe maybe I'm revealing too much of a personality defect or maybe even like a clinical condition I have, but that's just the case. But my kids love it. I eat it maybe twice a week. But anyways, that's not the point. JoinTheMajorityReport.com. Also, don't forget, I wanted to use this with Elie, but
I'm losing it, bro.
That is the sound drop that launched the merch, the I'm Losing It, Bro Majority Report t-shirt, all the proceeds of which go to skidrow.org. It is a Skid Row Trust. It is organization that supports literally thousands of unhoused folks in LA. And John Benjamin and I put this together. I came up with the it, and he wrote
I'm losing it, bro.
I'm losing bro part. And we were like workshopping, like I'm losing my keys. No, and we settled on it. So the t-shirt says I'm losing it, bro. And you can check it out. The creative process when we were coming up for that was just, I wish you were in the room, honestly. But check it out. We got a lot of other merch at shop.majorityreportradio.com. Of course, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. If it wasn't for Just Coffee, I would be flat on the desk right now. I'd be dropping out of frame. Drinking probably more coffee than I should, but I'm enjoying it. So. And don't forget AM Quickie. You can sign up for it at amquickie.com. Tonight is Tuesday night. And on TMBS, protecting the post office. That's still extant. I mean, supposedly, I think they're holding it hostage, frankly, to leverage it. Make it like, oh, this is a Democratic get. We're allowing you to get in the next round of coronavirus relief, which has to come, I think, folks. Has to. I mean, I don't know. These people are lunatics. But so on TMBS tonight, protecting the post office, Bill Fletcher Jr. will be on with the 5 steps for the labor movement. And you have a post game reflecting on Chris Haney, who responds to the Sam Harris disaster on BLM. Joshua Kahn Russell, the organizer on the Pentagon War Games and the right-wing populist drama that is happening. Check that out tonight. YouTube.com, The Michael Brooks Show, Patreon.com, TMBS. Also, where's Nomi? Do we have her?
She's not in the waiting room yet. No.
She said she would be here a few minutes ago.
I can't hear you, Brendan. You're so low.
Oh, am I still?
Yeah. What are you doing?
Also on TMBS, because Michael's got his Castro beard, we'll be talking about Fidel Castro in Harlem in 1965.
Why are you sound low to me too? What do you guys
really?
That might just be you, Sam.
That's
that might be your mic, yeah.
My mic?
No, your
headphones.
Input, yeah.
Oh, I think that's what it is. Yeah, it is. There we go.
How's that?
Oh, that's much better. Sometimes I turn down the music as I'm going in to get the guest, and then I forget to do it. I get so many different controls on this thing. I'm completely overwhelmed. Completely overwhelmed.
Nobody said she'd be on a few minutes ago, but she must be having some sort of technical issue.
All right. Well, we will talk more about Nomi's show, but check it out. It's always great. So it really doesn't matter what she has on. It's a consistently a great show. The Nomi Key Show, patreon.com, the Nomi Key Show, and of course on youtube.com, the Nomi Key Show / the Nomi Key Show. Don't forget the Antifada. Jamie had a whole array of things, and also on her Vampire Castle show, she's talking about vampires, actual vampires, to the extent that they exist.
Well, cinema vampires.
Cinema vampires.
Yeah.
She doesn't ever like talk about them in the wild or whatever it is.
Well, they might do some of that, but I think it's mostly about pop culture vampires.
All right. Well, Matt, why don't you tell me what's happening on Literary Hangover?
Yeah, last night I hit the high seas of the North Atlantic in Assassin's Creed Rogue, and we learned about hydrarchy, which is the labor power of the sailors in the North Atlantic, and how it was very multiracial, very from all over the world, and pretty revolutionary too. So that was from Peter Linebaugh and Marcus Rediker's The Many-Headed Hydra. And also there will be a new episode, a couple new episodes coming up soon, but I don't want to say more than that.
There was sailor labor power?
Yeah, of course. I mean, think of all the, for instance, you didn't want too many sailors aboard your ship that knew how to navigate, because that becomes a mutiny problem, right? And those sorts of things.
Right. I was going to say, it seems to me they lose all their leverage when they get to shore.
Well, you might not have to go back to shore. You just keep on the high seas. Raise the black flag.
Well, then what are you going to do? I mean, like, what are you going to do with your wages at that point? How do you get off the boat?
Oh, wages aren't as important to you once you're a pirate.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't follow any of that. All right, folks.
Oh, Nomi just arrived. Should we?
Should we? She did? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's get Nomi in. Nomi will tell us about what she's got on her show this week, and then we will head to the fun half. Nomi. There she comes. Here she comes.
Wait.
I can hear you.
Wait.
All right. Well, just tell us what's on your show this week.
What's on the show this week? We have Representative Chris Rabb from Pennsylvania, who has some pretty transformative legislation, that criminal justice reform legislation, and he's been a big activist in taking down the statue movement. We have congressional candidate Rebecca Parson, who's out of Washington State, socialist, running a pretty incredible campaign. And then we do a segment on naturally COVID in Arizona, just because it's gotten so crazy and people keep asking, so I had to bring someone on to talk about it.
All right. Well, we'll take a quick break, head into the fun half. We should wrap up, I guess, the Booker McGrath thing. A real bummer about that, but we'll talk about it in the fun half right back after this. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous? You're a little bit upset? You're riled up?
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 8s. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Ooh.
Rand Paul. I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
I think I might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird.
No way.
Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook.
Throw our hands up.
Ooh.
Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up.
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
We're back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Let's play this clip. It just popped up. There are apparently the Senate is holding some hearings and on the coronavirus. And Rand Paul, as you know me and welcome, as you know, was raised by a lunatic. He himself also probably has some of that lunatic gene, the conspiracy theory stuff. Yeah. I mean, so, if you're Rand Paul, you really got to get ahead of this because you got QAnon out there. You've got all the, the masks are going to, are really meant to poison us and keep a muzzle on us. And here he is on with Fauci. And I guess Fauci is, I think, basically getting close to that point where he may realize, like, I'm not necessarily doing any good anymore. Like, I'm now, like, they're not listening to me. President's not going to do anything. Nobody's going to do anything. And now all I am doing is absorbing a lot of BS from these lunatics who are, like, hell-bent on this suicide mission for the country. Here is this clip. You got it, Brendan?
From you. All I hear, Dr. Fauci, is we can't do this, we can't do that, we can't play baseball. Well, even that's not based on the science. I mean, flu season peaks in February. We don't know that COVID's going to be like the flu season. It might, but we don't know that. But we wouldn't ban school in October. You might close some schools when they get the flu. We need to not be so presumptuous that we know everything. But my question to you is, can't you give us a little bit more on schools that we can get back to school, that there's a great deal of evidence and it's actually good evidence that kids aren't transmitting this. It's rare and that kids are staying healthy and that, yes, we can open our schools.
Mr. Chairman, do I have a little bit of time to...
Well, I give you a little. That was well over 5 minutes, but we'll...
Thank you, Senator
Go ahead and
Paul.
Please answer the question.
Yeah, so very quickly, Senator Paul, I agree with a lot of what you say about, this idea about people having to put their opinions out without data. And sometimes you have to make extrapolations because you're in a position where you need to at least give some sort of recommendation. But if you were listening, and I think you were, to my opening statement and my response to one of the questions, I feel very strongly we need to do whatever we can to get the children back to school. So I think we are in lock agreement with that. The other thing that I'd like to clarify very briefly is that when things get in the press of what I supposedly said, I didn't say. I never said we can't play a certain sport. What happens is that people in the sport industry, they could either be people from Players Association, owners, people involved in the health of the players, ask me opinions regarding certain facts about the spread of the virus, what the dynamics are. I give it, and then it gets interpreted that I'm saying you can't play this sport or you can't play that sport. I agree with you. I am completely unqualified to tell you whether you can play a sport or not. The only thing that I can do is, to the best of my ability, give you the facts and the evidence associated with I know about this outbreak. Thank you.
Thank you.
So there, Rand Paul is saying, you're not optimistic enough. Think about the mentality that's involved in this. You don't want Fauci to be optimistic or pessimistic. You want him to just give you an assessment of what the risk factors are, and nobody's listening. Noma, you're there in the middle of an outbreak, and what we're seeing today in Arizona is necessarily, based upon anything that has changed in the past couple of days, necessarily actually better than it will be in 3 weeks. Like, we
great.
know that as of today, it's going to be worse over the next 3 weeks. Now, maybe something changes tomorrow where everybody goes inside, but right now it's going to be worse in 3 weeks than it is today. And it looks like it's shocking there.
And there's no infrastructure in place. I mean, the hospitals are already at capacity. I think what's so crazy about what Rand Paul is saying is, first off, suddenly he believes in schools. Like, that's a thing that's on the top of his list. Is he invested in some sort of charter school? That's what I'm curious to know. No, I mean, I was listening to a podcast this weekend about it was Fresh Air, and they were talking about, you know, what's basically like update us on what we can just do in society, like as humans who believe in science with COVID risks. And they were talking about beaches going into the 4th of July weekend. And they said it's not the beach that's dangerous. It's not even having all the people on the beach that's dangerous, because there's more airflow, you're outside, especially if there's masks. It's when you open up the beach, you're opening up tourism for that area. So suddenly you'll have a flood of people coming in down to Florida from New York or wherever they're coming from. And so that's the kind of thing that's like, people don't understand the context of why Dr. Fauci's saying certain things. It's not that he's against baseball or for baseball or whatever it is a specific question within the context of a greater conversation. And they're using it, obviously, for political motivations. And it's just, I mean, it's not about optimism. It's about politics. And if we weren't in an election cycle, would they be listening to the science a little bit more? Probably not, because it still affects their bottom line, which is politics.
It's this stuff is so insane. I can't. I mean, it's like every moment I just am like, I can't. You know, like as bad as one could anticipate how we would handle this with an incompetent like Donald Trump. Like it's very hard to sort of understand the exponential stupidity that exists in this era.
But it's not Donald Trump, just Donald Trump. It's everybody.
No, it's not just Donald Trump. Exactly. That's my point, is that like I could anticipate that Donald Trump would be incompetent, but the Republican parties, and I on some level I'm not surprised by it, but just seeing it in and of itself, it's like you can know that the Grand Canyon is impressive, but when you get right in front of it, you're like, wow, this is amazing. That's sort of what I feel like. Like I could have anticipated this, but like when you actually see it, the level of like just sort of, I don't know. We're just they're just ushering people into a meat grinder. Here is Steve Ducey talking to Ronna McDaniel. They left North Carolina to do their RNC because North Carolina was like, we don't feel comfortable with you bringing a bunch of people, thousands of people here in person and getting into a stadium. And so they went down to Jacksonville, Florida. They're planning to do it in August. And of course, now Florida's having a massive outbreak because Ron DeSantis was like, you know, we don't need to do any of that kind of stuff. Jacksonville immediately declares that they're mandating, masks to be worn in public and in large events. So therefore, there's going to have to be masks at the RNC. And they still, Ronna McDaniel, like Ducey was like, you're not going to, he asked at one point, he says, you're not going to keep people from wearing masks indoor. And she says, no, we'll allow people to wear masks. Like, I think you're missing the point. Here she is with Steve Ducey on Fox and Friends this morning. Ronna McDaniel, of course, is the head of the RNC, chairwoman of the RNC.
And I understand that, but more states every day are mandating people, their citizens, to wear masks. And I think that if the president wore one, it would just set a good example. He'd be a good role model. I don't see any downside to the president wearing a mask in public.
And he has done that, and I know the president is concerned with every single American right now. That's his first priority, is the health and safety of this country, but also balancing that with starting our economy, because you have a lot of people who are conflating it's one choice or the other. We can't go to work. We can't start this economy because of coronavirus. But I think there's a way to marry the two, and the president is figuring out that balancing act of how do we get Americans working who are worried about their wages and whether or not they can have an income, and how do we do that in a safe and healthy way? And that's what the president and vice president have done leading this coronavirus effort.
Sure. And I think by wearing masks, you can keep the economy open, and closing things are the last thing anybody wants to do. MAGA should now stand for masks are great again. Let me give you some marketing advice right there. All right, Ron.
What is going on?
Dude, poor Ducey. He just feels like I really am getting the sense with Ducey lately that he's just like, I can't believe it. Like, because I think Ducey is personally aware of it.
Yeah.
And I think he's personally concerned about COVID, and I think he's realizing like that he has been spending the better part of his career creating a monster that very well may devour him personally. Like like he's getting out there saying that the president should wear a mask, and her response is, yeah, but he's got to balance the mask wearing with helping the economy.
How about he invested in a mask company and then he contracts the entire government, everybody in America gets one of his masks. I will give him that. Give him that, situation. Flat out corruption.
That's
exactly
how you have to speak
what
we should do. Mm-hmm. Donald Trump owns like 70% of a mask. Even like if he had like 20% of the mask industry, mask would be completely mandated across the country.
I'd be okay with that at this point.
I mean, it would help. Couldn't hurt at this point. Meanwhile, I don't know what the F Andrew Cuomo, I want the joke I want to make is like, this is what happens when you wear your mask. Like you get too much CO2 and your brain starts going awry. But
the paper mache?
that's not true. But I don't know. How does something like this happen, Nomi? Here is Andrew Cuomo with a replica of Mount Marcy. Is this a mountain in New York State? I'm not aware of it.
What's the one that you can't, if once you go past the mountain, everything's a secret? Because back in the old days, like when all the New Yorkers would go up to, upstate, the New Yorkers would go up to Albany, and then once you pass that mountain, you couldn't talk about it, like, because they were all doing horrible things in Albany.
I don't know. Mount Marcy is a mountain in New York State. It's in Lake Placid, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Tallest peak in New York State.
Oh, it's the tallest peak in New York State.
What I don't understand is we should just play it.
All right, let's play it. I mean, because this is
metaphor.
I don't understand if they had this and they were just like, they're talking about like, oh, incidentally, this is a good place to go hiking. And it reminds me it's a metaphor, or if they actually just did this.
This, you know what this is? No. This is the mountain. What is the tallest mountain in the state of New York? Mount Marcy. This is the mountain that New Yorkers climb. You know, I keep showing the curve. This is the curve. It's actually proportionate. We started on day 1, and the numbers kept going straight up for 42 days.
Really? How about just putting a little bit more money into education instead of like showing us a picture of a mountain?
It's like, and meanwhile, the good kids at
like what, like
charter
what?
school 45 paid for no. He's just, I think the issue with Cuomo, that one of his biggest weaknesses is that, he's a control freak and he's insular, and now he's really doesn't have folks around him who are grounded in reality at all. They've either gone to jail, frankly, or are just out. And I mean, I don't think Melissa DeRosa is pushing back. That's who that woman was in the shot. I don't think she's pushing back and saying, you're out of your freaking mind.
I noticed she like unveiled it and then stepped out of like a camera view. How do I get out of here?
Have you listened to his joke telling before? There's a lot of things that come out of his mouth as I think brilliant in some ways of a tactician he is. He is kind of loony. I mean, the way Chris Cuomo comes off loony on air sometimes, you're just like, where is this coming from? Who says these things? And then you realize it's the son of a governor who's never seen actual people.
Right.
Or spoken to real people that says these things.
Well, he's also, I think, got to be concerned about what's happening in New York City right now, because there is, like, you know, we have this. There's going to be a problem in the city, and I don't know when it happens, but that mountain is going to come back to haunt him. Let's put it that way, because I have a feeling that thing's going to look like. That back end is going to look more like a valley than it does the plains, essentially. Not to carry this metaphor too far, but I don't know. That was bizarre.
Super weird.
Here is calling from a 510 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, is that me?
Yes, it is.
Awesome. Let me get you off of the headset.
Okay.
Just a second here. There we go. Is that better?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Sorry, I actually have to put you on speakerphone because I forgot my list. But just a second.
I got nothing else to do. Just hanging out, doing a show.
No, it's been months.
What?
Okay.
I want to say, first of all...
Who is this? Where are you calling from?
Oh, hey, it's Hamish from Tahoe.
Hamish from Tahoe.
Trying to get through for months. I really appreciate you hanging on for a few extra seconds there. I wanted to say the AM Quickie is awesome. I really appreciate having something with the tenor of the majority report, but it's a shareable format, and it's really good to be sending that out to folks I know. Have you had Lucy on Majority Report? Have you introduced her?
No, we were going to have her come in on a Friday, and then everything just sort of fell apart.
Yeah.
I'll have her on. I wanted to. We had meant to do it like in February, and then something got canceled with the schedule, and then we were going to do it in late March, and then obviously we were out of the office, and then one thing is another, and blah blah blah.
Oh, the same thing's happening here too. I get it. So awesome. I just want to say that, and then also just bring up an issue that COVID is affecting, which is campaigns to get initiatives on ballots where you need to get out there and collect signatures. Yeah. I've got a friend in Boulder who is trying to get an initiative on their ballot, and they tried to get the digital signature get the okay from the city council to do digital signature collection, and somebody on the city council was like, nah, we really can't let COVID limit our democracy. So
of course
said that, and they have to get out there and collect the signatures by in person. So they're out there with tables and masks, and they're letting anybody that signs keep the pen, doing their best. And it looks like they might make it, but if anybody, can I plug it?
Sure.
Okay, awesome. So these guys are just, grassroots, self-organized, and they're in Boulder, Colorado, trying to get this initiative on the ballot. They're called Bedrooms for People. They're on on Facebook, Twitter as well. All they're trying to do is get this in front of voters for November, and you can find out where they are collecting signatures by going to the Facebook and the Twitter to find out more about them.
All right, great. Appreciate the call.
Hey, thanks so much. Take care.
Bye-bye.
It's interesting because I've seen, I mean, you have to check per state, but there are there's a lot of firms that do the field for this kind of work, petitioning and obviously candidates too, where they're actually doing field in person now, but they've put in they've put some thought into how they conduct it. I couldn't tell you. I just had one person come to our door here, very distant, gloves, was like, please bring a pen for your home. And so they have different ways that they're doing it. So if you are trying to organize, I would call up some of these firms and just figure out, if they're practicing this. I mean, these are progressives that came to my house, so I figured they're practicing it a little bit better. But people are doing door knocking right now is essentially what I'm trying to say.
Well, that's a big problem. Ed Markey almost, had trouble getting signatures
Yep.
up in Massachusetts. And today is election day in Colorado. Hopefully we see Andrew Romanoff pull something out with Booker apparently just couldn't pull it out against McGrath. I mean, Chuck Schumer put in millions of dollars into this. I mean, obviously not his own money, but he steered a ton of money to Amy McGrath. And it's like, just a bad job of picking a candidate. I think it's quite clear. I bet you that there's probably enough ballots that are in the mail that would come in for Booker after the fact that would get him elected, frankly, at this point. But in a general election, it's quite clear that he was the candidate who could sort of like build some type of momentum. And I think it's unlikely that either one of those candidates, unlikely, not impossible, but unlikely that either one of them would have beat McConnell.
Right.
But I feel like the upside for Booker was much higher.
Yeah.
I mean, McGrath has a ceiling based upon just like how many of those, Republicans there are in the suburbs type of thing. And I think Booker didn't have that ceiling. And
it was an opportunity to rebuild the Democratic Party from the roots in Kentucky in a way that hasn't been done. I mean, these are the things that I just wish Senate leadership, and I understand, like, he lives in a little, all he's thinking about is votes and making himself look left, as you like to say.
Well, yes, I really think that's what it is. He wants a McGrath in there because if somebody comes in from Kentucky, he wants to be able to say, like,
right.
A big portion of my caucus is to the right of me.
Right. It's a shame. Although the one pushback I'll have, and I hear this from a lot of folks, is generally speaking, and it has kind of turned out this way, the mail-ins are skewing more conservative and older. So I'm not sure what metrics they'd be looking at in Kentucky that would, it's obviously state by state and how they handle their mail-in system. But it has, I know a lot of candidates are like, we're waiting for 40,000, but if the margin is large enough, it usually ends up working more in the favor of the establishment candidate.
Right.
We haven't actually, I don't think we've seen anybody so far. I don't think in any case where it's been that close, it's gone progressive. I might
Hopefully,
be wrong.
Romanoff can pull it off today. Calling from a 502 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Sam, can you hear me?
Yeah, who's this?
This is Ryan from Louisville.
Ryan from Louisville. What's happening, Ryan?
Speaking of.
I had three things I wanted to say very quickly. As far as the Senate election, it sucks that Booker lost. I hope Booker and Mike Royer will continue to run again in future elections in Kentucky. And second topic, as far as the populist left working with the populist right, I mean, the only Republicans that anybody should vote for is the ones in our own party, like Barack Obama, people like that. And the only time Republicans are even barely good at all is when it's like Governor Gary Johnson, and then he leaves and you never see him again. Or it's Reform Party Governor Jesse Ventura, who ends up leaving the right wing and going to be a Green.
Yeah.
And the third thing, the right wing, they do the taxation of theft, and they always quote, government is not the solution to the problem by Reagan. I think, the left, we need our own stuff. So we should just make bumper stickers that say profit is theft. And business isn't the solution, it's the problem. What do you think?
Well, I think, Ryan, you have the ability to make stickers, man. I would do it. Send me one. Send me one. Make the stickers. Send me one, and we'll plug it.
All right.
Appreciate the call.
Thank you.
So this happened the other day. Donald Trump tweeted out a footage at the Village. Where is this? The Village, Brendan. Where is the Villages?
The Villages is in Central Florida.
Okay.
It is a retirement community full of golf carts and pickleball courts, and is maybe the highest concentration of conservative voters in America.
Wow. Okay.
What is it? Pickle bar? What is this?
Oh, pickleball. You don't know what that is?
What
it's
is
like
that?
it's like you play it on a tennis court, or a small tennis court, and you play it with like plastic rackets, and basically what amounts to like a wiffle ball, like a plastic ball.
Okay.
And it's sort of like a combination of ping pong and tennis. And apparently it's the fastest growing sport in the country, because I think, like, it's for older folks who want to play tennis, but they don't want to move that much.
Too much work.
Yeah. Here is a video that Donald Trump retweeted. The president of the United States retweeted this, and this guy's expressing a perspective on what he thinks should happen in regards to whites.
Where's your white hood? Where's your white hood? Racist. Yeah, you got it. You. White power. Yeah, there you go. White power. Do you hear that? Fuck Trump. Oh, would you stop?
I appreciate the sentiment. So Donald Trump tweets out this thing that says white power. And here's the story behind this. So Trump tweets it out, and they apparently they argue that, like, oh, he didn't realize that the guy had said that in the video. I don't know why else you would tweet it out.
Right.
But President Donald Trump, this is the NBC News, set off a 5-alarm fire in the White House on Sunday morning. Now, I just want you to contemplate this. There's a 5-alarm fire in the White House. All right. Now, it's not a literal 5-alarm fire, but there's something really, really important going on. People are very concerned about it. And the video remained on the president's Twitter page with 82 million followers for more than 3 hours. Why? Because White House officials couldn't reach him to ask him to delete it, 2 officials said. The president was at his golf club in Virginia and had to put his phone down, the officials said. Aides also tried unsuccessfully to reach Deputy Chief of Staff Dan Scavino to ask him to delete the retweet, officials said. Once the officials were able to reach the president, he agreed to delete it. Nomi, are we to effing believe that they can't reach the president of the United States for 3 hours when he's on a golf course? Like,
yeah, I
no
actually do
Secret
believe
Service around this. Like, honestly, or here's the alternate theory I have. Mr. President, were you aware that guy said white power? Yes? No? Doesn't matter? He goes, let's leave it up for a little bit. That'll get people going. I mean, that's what happened.
Yeah.
They intentionally left it up and took it down after the fact because he wanted to signal, he wanted to get it out there, and this is the game that he plays. And it doesn't matter what's in his heart. The guy is racist by virtue of the fact that he is using racism as a political tool. I'm sorry. That qualifies you as racist.
Absolutely. I mean, what's strange to me is, like, through this story, which they clearly put out this messaging in some way or form, whether it was directly to a reporter or through Q&A or whatever. Through it, they basically revealed that there's, like, no fail-safe either, that there's no system there to, in case somebody steals his phone and tweets something out, it's like, well, how are they going to get access? There's no system. I mean, is he the only person who has access to his Twitter account?
Well, that's why it's a lie.
Government, yeah.
But that's why it's a lie. The idea that the aides can't get in touch with the president in 3 hours, he's surrounded by Secret Service people. Those aides don't know how to reach the Secret Service. I mean, this is absurd. It's an absurd lie. The idea that the Times, the Post, their NBC or anybody would just like repeat this.
That's what I'm saying. It's just bad journalism. Why are they even not even pushing back?
It's absurd. It's absolutely absurd that people would even, and if that's the case, if it's the case that they can't reach the president with 3 hours, we need to have like congressional hearings on like, hey, wait a second. This is the guy who controls the nuclear suitcase.
Exactly.
We can't reach him with 3 hours? Are you kidding me?
Can you imagine? Oh, my God. The other thing is, like, alternatively, isn't Twitter supposed to put some sort of, for content like that, which is, I mean, at least illustrates very sensitive language, whether, you know, I think the video was taken from somebody who's in opposition, but aren't they supposed to, like, flag it?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I like, you know, it is what it is. We would put it up there. We wouldn't do it because we're bragging about it.
Right.
We're not doing it because the guy's in support of us. Here is Ben Shapiro, who is trying to explain away. I mean, this guy, how reprehensible do you have to be to expend your mental capacity to try and excuse the fact that the president is retweeting a guy saying white power? And like, look at the mental gymnastics that Ben Shapiro is doing. And remember now, Shapiro is also trying to make it seem like I'm not a shill for Donald Trump. I'm just looking at this reasonably and with analysis. And it just happens to come out, you know, sort of in favor of Trump. But the way that he does this is like, I'm going to sort of like, this is like a humble brag type of thing. Like, Trump is so dumb, he couldn't be this evil.
This reared its ugly head yesterday again when President Trump decided to retweet a video. And this made national news because, again, it is reflective of a narrative that the left would like to push, which is that President Trump is a white supremacist. Now, I think what actually happened here is the same thing that happens to a lot of people on Twitter. When you're bored, you just start retweeting things. And when you retweet things, you don't always watch the video all the way to the end. And President Trump, as we know, has the attention span of a gnat. Right? The president of the United States he literally will not read presidential briefings that are put on his desk. They have to put them in bullet point form, and then he doesn't even read those. He'll ask for those to be shortened. Okay, the man is not famous for sitting there and reading tomes of Winston Churchill. Right? So when it comes to watching videos online, my guess is he saw a person driving past with a Trump sign, and then he just retweeted it. Right? That is the most likely explanation. Does anyone really think that President Trump, even the people who think that, wow, he's a racist dummy and all that, even those people, do you think that he really would intentionally retweet a video in which somebody is shouting white power, which is what happens in this video?
Yes.
Like, are there a lot of people who think that would be like just out of simple self-preservation? If he had actually known what was in the video, you think he would have tweeted it? Or is it more likely that, like everybody else, the sound was off on his computer, he sees a person yelling with a Trump 2020 sticker on the front of the golf cart. Trump loves everybody who loves him, and this is a simple fact of the matter, and so he retweets them.
Okay. First off, they're explaining, which means they're losing. So this is a real rabbit hole. If even it's like Ducey, Steve Ducey, sitting there, it goes against all of their business interests at this point to be on the opposite side of Donald Trump. But there's some level of like, well, I have to toe the line because this guy might go down. This guy might go down, and I have to at least call him out for being an idiot. Right. I need to have some tether to the shore because I'm floating off into the abyss. But first of all, it is completely believable that Donald Trump would retweet this just as a way of, you know, he loves to rile the press. And he knows that this also speaks to his base. And he knows that they could do just exactly what they've done. Kaylee, your buddy, Kaylee McEnany, or whatever her name is, she comes out and says, oh, he didn't hear the audio of it. And shills like Ben Shapiro will go out and go, he didn't hear the audio of it. And then, well, wait, why didn't they take it down? Why did it take 3 hours to take it down? Oh, because we couldn't get in touch with the president because he was on a golf course. So we couldn't reach him. I mean,
are you
that itself,
kidding? Like,
admit that he's on a golf course, number one.
I mean, first off, which is more believable? Which is more believable? That you can't get in touch with the president for 3 hours? Like, why doesn't he retweet? If it was a complete mistake, why doesn't he tweet out, I apologize. I didn't mean to put out that video. I mean, which is more believable? The idea that just like total coincidence, totally by accident, just a complete, mistake that took, a long time to correct, because it's very hard to reach the president when everybody's, got a crisis.
He spoke to his base. His base doesn't watch the news, doesn't listen to fact checks, doesn't listen to, press conferences. His base listens to QAnon and whatever, like the Nazi, not Ben Shapiro, whatever that. And Ben Shapiro's there to justify to the conservatives who may not identify that, it was a mistake. And the rest of us can just go on with our merry ways and continue to criticize him.
Right. And in the meantime, what's also lost in this is that, the idea of Trump supporters so closely associated with the concept of white supremacy.
Yeah. Don't forget who his advisor right now on racial relations is.
Who is that? Is it Stephen Miller?
Stephen Miller, yes.
Oh, my God.
Are we forgetting? I mean, it's like, oh, of course, I don't believe that he believes in white power. The guy who puts children in cages and tells everyone not to wear masks or won't wear a mask on air because it's not a sign of strength. Oh, I can't. Of course he wouldn't tweet out a white power video. Of course not.
Or maybe the other, the fourth order alternate version of, why it's okay for the president of the United States to retweet a guy yelling white power could be that it's actually just everybody's got a more developed sense of humor than the rest of us who read it. And here is the genius, and both comedic and just generically genius, Michael Knowles from that same, he's on Daily Wire as well, right? They are really heavily involved in the cleanup operation after this. Here's Michael Knowles saying that, he probably thought it was a joke.
So President Trump's got his work cut out for him. And I got to say, sometimes he doesn't help himself. He doesn't. I love the guy, but sometimes he makes it hard on himself. He tweeted out a clip over the weekend. It was a group of seniors from the villages in Florida who were protesting against each other. One of the guys hated Trump. The other one was driving by in a golf cart with a Trump flag. And Trump tweets out, "Thank you to the great people of the villages. The radical left do-nothing Democrats will fall in the fall. Corrupt Joe is shot. See you soon." And it included a video, which I guess he didn't listen to, because in the video, the people with the Trump flags were either jokingly or earnestly yelling the words white power.
Where's your wife, Roy? White power! Yes, there you go, white power. You hear that?
Okay, what is going on in this video? Do I think that these seniors who are driving by in the golf carts and kind of laughing, saying white power, do I think that they are members of the Ku Klux Klan? I don't know for sure, but I don't think so. I think what actually happened in this video is they're going by and they've got a little Trump flag, and then this kind of maniac, the left-winger guy, says white power, and they're joking. They're mocking him. The first person to say white power in the clip is not the Trump supporter, it's the Democrat. And I think they're mocking him. He goes, "Yeah, you guys are for white power." And they're like, "Oh, yeah, we're for white power. Oh, we love white power. You got us. Where's your Klan hood, honey?" That's what I think this is really about.
Michael Knowles believes that you cannot be a white supremacist unless you're a member of the Klan, apparently.
They probably were, though. They're old enough, so.
Yeah, I mean, that is an interesting bar in which he is setting. They're not Klan members. They probably haven't. I mean, do I think that they have actually lynched anybody? No.
Sounds like he's going to win this election based on these defenses.
No, I don't think that they have. Yeah.
This is the book that Ivana Trump said Trump kept on his bedstand.
Wait, when did she say that? What?
In a 1990 Vanity Fair interview.
Well, it was just interesting reading. I mean, it's a good thing to keep in touch with history.
That's horrifying.
She told her lawyer that.
Well, there you go.
Horrifying.
But I mean, Michael Knowles, he knows. Like, I think that they're KKK. Do I think that these people have committed, murderous, lynching? No, I don't. So it's okay. It's just a joke. And besides, Trump probably didn't hear it anyways. None of this is real, is what Michael Knowles is telling us. So imagine professionally having to like pump this garbage out. Or my job is to defend this type of stuff. Nauseating.
Let's note Ben Shapiro's track record of Steve King is not actually a racist, and the left is just overacting about him.
Yeah, maybe racists don't exist. Whenever people say these racist things, I think probably either they don't realize that that people can hear them, or they're just joking, saying it ironically, like, yeah, sure, white power, right.
I just don't understand how someone like Ben Shapiro, especially after he just put that book on screen, or frankly, his own kids, can justify this stuff. At this point, based on these actions, how he's operating, I don't understand this relationship with the far right in Israel at this point with Donald Trump. It is so explicitly clear where he stands on these issues.
Oh, well, I mean, the far right in Israel has made common cause with nationalists and white nationalists in Europe as well. I think their argument is like basically, we will take their support as long as it takes us. And there's a great quote. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something to that effect. Like, we'll take it. I'm not worried. They're not coming here is basically it. And, as far as Shapiro goes, I think like this is, his everything in his life is a function of maintaining this alliance with these people. I mean, if Ben Shapiro loses his right-wing sinecure, where's he going to go? Yeah. Where's Mike Knowles going to go if he in any way? I mean, look what happened to Glenn Beck.
Yeah.
Glenn Beck realized like his entire empire is going to go away if he actually tries this, move to being a reasonable human being.
Right.
I don't know if that was what motivated him, or he just thought it was a business move, but they know there is one very narrow path to them maintaining their relevance, their income, their lifestyle, all of it. And so they adhere to it. I don't know how conscious they are, in the moment of it, but it is, there's, what was that? Was it Dr. Death or Mr. Death? The Errol Morris film about the guy who was adopted by neo-Nazis in Europe because he had done some work on gas chambers. And he's just like just a guy, like he had been, dealt with gas in the United States, dealing with executions.
Okay.
And they brought him. What is it?
Mr. Death.
Mr. Death. And it's basically just a story of this like sad sack guy who becomes this sort of like feted celebrity
right
in these circles. And it's like just shows how he just went along for the ride and adopted it because he was getting some attention. That's what these guys are.
That's how all of this works. I mean, it always comes back to this. It's every far right. I mean, I was talking about this yesterday with somebody. When I was in Puerto Rico, I was covering the crypto fascists, but there was no term for crypto fascist. I was undercover with them. They thought they were using TYT as some sort of vehicle to recruit people into their movement. But in the inner circle, I would say most people weren't even conscious of the political agenda there. They were just kind of like rich, nice guys that didn't understand what was happening. But in the inner circle of Brock Pierce's, who has literally been like tried for facilitating pedophilia with Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, it was horrifying. They used words like supremacy. They used words like, we're building this alternative universe where people we like come in. I mean, these were the terminology, and it was mind-blowing to see it like in action as someone documenting it, how clueless everyone around them was to what the agenda was until obviously it's too late.
Yeah, that's fascinating. What did you ever do with that? Did you ever like put out a report? Or
well, I don't know if I should talk about this on air. I have it. I finally got it from TYT. I was laid off from TYT, and lots of the footage never made it on air. Let's just say that. But I have it, and I want to do something with it. So maybe I'll start a GoFundMe to finish up the project, because there's a lot of really good stuff there.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating.
It's really interesting stuff. Crazy town. Just Google if you have a chance. Brock Pierce, Puerto Rico, and that's what I
heard a little bit about that, dude. I think we talked about, but
cuckoo for
and so you were embedded in that, really?
So I was down on the island covering the storm, post-storm, and then just following all these different lines of stories. Charter school movement taking over all the schools that were being shut down, privatization, the independence movement, the governor being a complete disaster. And then what I just kept running into were these crypto guys. This is like in January, February. And I built a relationship,
Cryptocurrency guys.
Cryptocurrency. There was already a movement there with kind of like the elders of the crypto world, and so there's a divide. But these young ones, the crypto fascists, led by Brock Pierce, started buying up land, and there's real tax incentive in Puerto Rico, facilitated by the governor in particular, former governor, who had to step down. And so they started recruiting people, and they came out of the what's the thing? I'm completely forgetting it. In Nevada every year, where they build
Burning Man?
Burning Man. They came out of the Burning Man crew. So some of the inner circle founders, the lawyer I believe at the Burning Man was out there with Brock Pierce, and they put out their call to folks and said, "Come here. We're gonna, start buying up land and investing in the island." And they would go from business to business to business and basically give them offers they couldn't refuse. And it was a real tug of war on the island because the governor was doing nothing. In fact, they were helping him behind the scenes, basically buy up the island. And they would go, they were kind of pushed out of San Juan at one point, so they went to the western side of the island where people were more open to it. It's really sad. And then, congruently, there was a real effort in the Democratic Party, the DNC, to push for statehood, which is a right-wing issue on the island. This is one thing, if there's anything I want to say over and over, and I'm probably going to make it a theme on my show, it's that statehood, Robert Reich, all the people who are pushing it out, Andrew Yang, that is a righthood item on the island. But it has infused itself into the Democratic Party.
But wouldn't that, where is the left on it? Do they want independence for Puerto Rico, or do they want
self-determination? Is sort of like self-determination, independence, but the whole party system there is based on what the stance is on statehood. It's not like the parties on the island are Democrat versus Republican. Some of them, the left-leaning ones are Democrats, but then the governor of that had to step down. He was seen as a Republican on the island, conservative on the island, but then partnered up with some folks that were, he was very close to Betsy DeVos, for instance, and he brought in Betsy DeVos as one of her chief, privatization experts, and she became the head of education, a white woman who spoke Spanish fluently, was very hated on the island, ruthless. We interviewed her. She was so calculating and cold about everything. And then, he met with Tom Perez, and I think Ryan Grimm ended up doing a piece on this. I remember talking to him quite a bit about it at the time, that they moved the votes. There was a coup in the Democratic Party, the actual Democratic Party, on the island. And it was over statehood because the traditional leftists don't believe in statehood. Whole other conversation. I would ask a Puerto Rican to come on and speak on, have them speak on it. But historically, independence was killed. Actually, it was a movement that was killed. There's still independence. It's a rising movement, but then there's self-determination. There's Carmen Yulín Cruz's perspective, building this coalition of Caribbean countries and states, because it was all about dividing all of these Caribbean islands from being their own force. And there was the military opportunity on the island. So anyways, the votes that won Tom Perez the election were from Puerto Rico, and they were votes that were earned by people that weren't even elected fairly on the island as DNC members. And so it officially became an agenda item for the Democratic Party on the mainland was statehood, when it never has been. And then they did this whole push to register all of these Puerto Ricans who had left the island after the storm and came to America to register to vote, which simultaneously you're pulling the vote away from their own island. And so at the same time, 2 million people left the island, 200,000 millionaires and billionaires had moved to the island. So there's just, it's really disgusting. It's really extremely complicated, but crypto fascists.
That's weird. It's both crypto and fascism and crypto fascism. Calling from a 412 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi. My name is Jason. Am I on, actually?
You are, Jason. What's on your mind?
Wow, that's fantastic. Yeah, so I'm pretty much a new listener for all intents and purposes.
Right.
My younger brother, Tanner, he put me down with your show, and, you know, sometimes I'm able to watch live, and, you know, sometimes I catch it on YouTube and all that, but almost every morning, you know, I get a link from my younger brother, Tanner. Oh, my God, I said his name. I swore I wouldn't, because he was like, if you say something stupid on this show, I swear to God. So,
Well,
anyway.
I'm not going to say his name. He's a good guy, but go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, you know him?
No, I don't.
Okay. He's my younger brother, Tanner. Anyway, so I got the link Friday, just last Friday,
right,
from my brother with a message. It was just morning laugh, you know, because we send that to back and forth, you know, and he thought that this particular episode was funny on the Majority Report. So I got that link, and again, I'm kind of new on the show, so I started looking into it, and as I'm listening on Friday, at the same time, obviously, I'm thinking about everything that's going on in this world, and it just is unbelievable how many nightmare topics there is to discuss. I can't believe it, and you handle it I hear this call on Friday.
Yeah.
And he starts talking about his T-shirt idea, I guess. And again, I'm reminding you that I'm a new listener, and I'm taking it seriously. I'm like, who is this weirdo? And is he actually fighting to cut, get a cut from homelessness people, for his T-shirt? I just couldn't comprehend it. I didn't know, everything that is into it now. But I'm thinking about all these things and who you're talking to. What is this place I live in? All right, that's fine. Well, all right, I have an idea for a T-shirt. I thought of it just when I was listening to your show, just when I was listening to that particular caller that I thought was real.
Okay.
And here it is. Oh, my God. As it turns out, I live in a shithole country.
I think that's probably...
I
think you want to probably, condense it a little bit. I think that's probably not so much a T-shirt. That may be like a book.
It may be. I was just calling for an effort to maybe lighten the hearts of this madness we're in. But that was just a funny thought that I had at the time on Friday. I wanted to call and I wanted to express it, and it took a couple of days to do that. But that was just, come on.
Yeah,
it's like,
I
really,
hear
you called that out a year and a half ago,
yeah.
And that's where we are now. We're getting, we can't fly to Europe.
Yeah.
In this time and day, we're eliminated. We're the shithole country.
They won't let us escape.
That's where it is.
Something to be said about that. Appreciate the call. Say hi to your brother. Just to add to the insanity of the day. The other day, I'm sure, Nomi, you saw the video of the barefoot St. Louis attorney and his wife came out to defend their mansion.
That house is insane. Who lives in a house like that?
That house is also nuts. He came out to defend it. She holding a tiny little handgun, her version of the handgun, and he with what appears to be a replica of an M16 that also apparently was for lefties, and he's a righty or something like that. I don't know. But here he is. Should we show the video first of what he did, and then
let's show this. Do you want to show the source first, or do you want to show the interview?
What do you think works better?
Probably the source, I think.
Yeah, let's see the source first. This is just for those people who missed it. We meant to play it yesterday, but we didn't have a chance. Here we go. Protesters outside there. They've got their guns. I don't know what they think they're doing, but he's standing guard there.
Oh my God.
Barefoot.
Honey, get your gun. Should we put our shoes on? No, don't worry.
She looks so sassy.
Yeah, and she's I don't feel like she's been trained
Yeah, you don't want that big crink in your elbow. I think that's.
I'm not gonna lie. I think it's a lipstick holder.
The kickback on that is gonna she's gonna end up shooting directly over her head or something. She's does not look like she's been trained whatsoever to handle that. It also doesn't look like she's actually ever fired that gun.
No.
I'm not even sure that he has either. I mean, don't
they have servants to go out there and do that for them?
You would think if you have that type of I don't know, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to be
House staff don't have access to the guns.
Yeah, we can't. Well, of course not, because there'll be a mutiny. Here they are on the local news, KSDK, explaining what was going on. And now listen, let's play the clip first.
Because as soon as I said this is private property, those words enraged the crowd. Absolute horde came through the now smashed down gate, coming right at the house. I mean, my east patio was 40 feet from Portland Place Drive, and these people were right up in my face, scared to death. And then I stood out there. The only thing we said is, this is private property. Go back. Private property. Leave now. At that point, everybody got enraged. There were people wearing body armor. One person pulled out some loaded pistol magazines and clicked them together and said, "You were next." We were threatened with our lives, threatened with a house being burned down, my office building being burned down, even our dog's life being threatened. It was about as bad as it can get. I mean, and there was, I really thought it was storming the Bastille, that we would be dead and the house would be burned, and there was nothing we could do about it. It was a huge and frightening crowd, and they broke in the gate and they were coming at us.
They were storming the Bastille. Well, maybe you shouldn't be living in the Bastille.
Do you know what the story was behind that?
Yeah, the Bastille wasn't like a French version of a McMansion.
Also, do you want to be on that side? He's
I would have simply clapped and applauded the protesters as they went past, and it wouldn't have been a problem.
Yeah,
that just shows how out of touch they are. They're they're revealing their deepest racism in such an open way that they think that people should be sympathetic to the fact that there are protesters outside. Do we know what they? I mean, is he an attorney? Is he a prosecutor? Do we have any sense were they protesting him?
No, I think sadly, I think he's a tort lawyer. I think he's a plaintiff's attorney. Yes,
maybe you'll see him the next time you go to a conference.
That would be awkward.
Interview him.
But here's the thing. Yeah, I would love to do that. But here's the thing: is that what must be going on in that couple's mind, in terms of they must know on some level, or they must feel on some level, that they are the villains. They are part of
the same thing with cops who plant razor blades in their food and things like that. That sort of projection.
Yeah,
I've done something, and if I knew what I did, I would be doing this.
Right,
but
exactly.
There's a fraternal order there. I mean, I'm not justifying what cops do, but it is an organized fraternal order of protection so that there is never any sort of set of consequences. These people are just rich people who are completely out of touch with what's happening in the world and have no sensitivity to racial issues, just completely...
But don't you think that they're getting on the phone, or they're at their, maybe not dinner party, maybe they're having dinner party, but whatever, and they're all of their rich friends, I mean, all their mansion buddies are all saying the same thing, it's getting bad out there. They're going to come for us. You don't in the moment think it's storming the Bastille. You've already laid this out in your head as to how this is going to go down, and then you come out. I mean, I've told this story before, before the RNC. A cop I knew, we had him on the program at one point, was telling us they were guys, there's going to be fire bombs and they're going to attack us and this and that. And they're being riled up. They're already anticipating this. Those folks are sitting in a world where they are waiting for this to happen because they're looking around at the opulence that they have. And they know, I mean, you're in St. Louis, there are people who are so immiserated that you should feel like maybe they're coming for us. And that's what's going on there.
They're making the case for capitalism and racism. No one else needs to make it. They know it. the people who don't believe it are the ones who are not part of the two ends, meaning they are very, very intuitively aware that their wealth is tied to the oppression of people of color.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is an awareness, and there is an expectation that this was happening. It's on, honey. We've been talking about this moment forever. It's on. They've stormed the Bastille.
Where's their bunker?
I think so. I saw this on Twitter, but this is, if there is a Halloween, this is a very good him and her couple.
Oh my gosh, yes, that's got to be it. I'll bulk up for that.
Oh God.
Got to get a pair of pants that are much longer, though. That's the
pleats.
Key.
You need some pleats.
Meanwhile, here's Donald Trump. Let's play that clip of Donald Trump lamenting what's happening with the statues, because you can't even believe what's going on there. This is sort of like that. Was it that Pretender song about? I think it's Ohio. That song about how they've paved over all these green spaces. Here's Donald Trump with a similar lament.
We also did not add the music that's under this for.
Okay.
This is less important, but it's very important. Some of the things that they're trying to destroy are magnificent pieces of art. Have you ever seen an area where a statue is removed and you look at the area and they put blacktop over the top of it, they put asphalt over the top, and that's the end? And it was the center of a town or a village, and now the statue's gone, and the whole village is like a different place.
Oh my God.
What village is he talking about? Why don't they put up another put up a piece of art? Who put the music on there? Was that Fox?
Yeah, that was unedited Fox.
No.
But, yeah.
He's talking about what happens, like the destruction of the town, the village town. What did they take? Why did they take the statue down in the town? Like, what is he talking about? Is he just completely fabricating this entire thing?
Yeah, this is one of those things where it's just a complete fantasy of his own making that he's convinced himself is real.
It almost sounds like he's talking about like one of those like kids movies where they took down the statue in the middle of the town and the whole town lamented, and then they, at the end of somebody returned the statue. I think like this was, I feel like this was like a storyline for like the what do you call it? Indiana Jones. I think the second Indiana Jones, I think, was like a village where they had taken like somebody had stolen the secret thing in the town square, the village square, and he had to return it or something. Where does he come up with this? And then they put this dramatic music. Who's in charge of this stuff?
I think he's trying to protect the fact that he wants statues put up of himself. What we don't know is there's a secret line item in the budget to erect statues all over the country of Donald Trump's face.
But isn't this like when he makes up some story about this, isn't it like sort of consistent with, I accidentally retweeted something that said white power and I couldn't remove it for 3 hours? Isn't that like he's signaling the same people? Like, I'm going to pretend that it's not an issue that it's not about the appraising people who fought this country to preserve slavery and to preserve the economic system that was slavery.
States' rights.
It's not about that. It's not about states' rights. It's about, like, just from an aesthetic standpoint, it's very sad to see the village without the statue in the middle of the town. It's paved over.
Tourism's going to go down. Don't you know? No one's going to go to Williamsburg anymore because they don't have those statues. Yeah.
But I mean, isn't that the same thing? It's like he's doing the exact same thing. He's signaling to these people, I'm with you, but as you know, we don't have free speech in this country anymore, so I can't possibly say it's about, the Confederacy. Right. It's really like we're a lesser place without these things.
Yeah, but my question is, like, how much of that does he need? I mean, isn't just his presidency in itself and the fact that this tension is existing, isn't that riling up his base enough that, of course, they're going to vote for him? I just don't understand what the strategy here is.
You don't understand ratings. It's always about what are you doing next week, not what you did last week. That's what it's about. Got to get that 7 share if we're going to get a pickup on the back end. That's what we got to do. I mean, honestly, I think that's his mentality. I really do think that's what it is. He's just like, we gotta slam this. Jonathan Armstead in film school. I read one of Carl Reiner's books called How Paul Robeson Saved My Life. Other mostly happy stories. Reiner had a really good set of progressive racial politics while in the segregated army of the 1940s, constantly squared off against a bigoted drill sergeant who thought African Americans provided nothing to society. I never got to check out his movies, though, but should start now. Does The Jerk still stand up? That's a good question. There are moments in The Jerk that do. I mean, you gotta like that kind of humor. I find that comedy movies do not stand up very well, generally speaking. That's always been my estimation. I mean, I think in some level that's why I left comedy, because I was like, this stuff it's not funny 10 years later, 15, 20 years later.
I'm trying to think of what's funny still.
I mean, I watched Monty Python as a kid, but I realize now in retrospect, it was only like 5 years out from probably when it was made, 6 years out, 8 years out. There's some, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just
Mrs. Doubtfire is still funny, in my opinion.
Well, then The Jerk might still be funny.
Christopher Guest movies are like the only things regularly find funny that are old.
Yeah.
That's true. Of course, Who's the Caboose? But aside from that, but I would watch them just because so many of those Reiner movies, I think, were sort of like seminal influences on comedians today. Andrew from D.C. I get why Fox News reports the Texas realtor no longer calls it master bedroom stories. It fits their look at this crazy libs narrative. Why does the supposedly left-leaning CNN, MSNBC's channels do it? Do they not get how trivial and how dumb it looks? Do they actually think it's some kind of tangible win? Thoughts?
Because they use the same tools.
Yes, it's laziness.
Right.
It's laziness. We are all basically, I mean, it's not that different from what we do on some level too. Like I came across that story. In fact, it's the opposite. It is a function of their lack of ideology as to why they report it, just because it's there. And it's just like, it's just an extension of it. If it leads, if it bleeds, it leads. They're lazy. They used to all go to Drudge.
Oh, yeah. And then they send out these, I mean, I guess the centrists do it too with like the political reports and all those things. But internally, like if you go on air, I don't know, I can't remember what they used to do at MSNBC, but I feel like when you go on air at Fox News, they send you like a rundown, essentially. Not a rundown, but like, this is what we're talking about. Here's the left perspective. Here's the right perspective. Tell us, what is your left perspective on this? And that was it. They wanted the ratings. They wanted to make sure that the person who was on air conflicting with the right person, there was enough like frustration there.
And I think, what news producers do is what everybody, broadly speaking, does in television, which is look around, see what the other people are doing, do it, because therefore you are not like conformity in this industry is the key to longevity. And if you stick your neck out, and I'm not speaking this, it was fine for me. I was, the whole thing was very good for me. But saying from a producer standpoint, sticking your neck out, for the most part, for people, they find it to be a unnecessary risk. And so invariably, they'll do what other networks are doing because that gives them cover. In fact, I think to a large extent, that's like, to the extent that I had any success in television, at least in making money, was a function of, at one point, like I got, onto a show, and then it became super easy for everybody to sign off on me. And it just like went like that, bing, 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 bing. Over the course of like 3 or 4 years, I did, 12 pilots.
You're like validated at that point.
I was totally validated. I was an easy yes because somebody else had said yes before that. And so that's the way that these things work. Where is this Sacha Baron Cohen thing from? Are we going to get...
oh my God, it's so good.
Are we going to get pinged for it?
This was definitely not filmed by his crew. This was filmed by someone in the crowd.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
No.
All right, so let's check this out. This is in Olympia, Washington. Decent town. I was up there, actually, for Who's the Caboose, for the Olympia Film Festival almost 25 years ago now. And there was a March for Our Rights 3.0, the gun rights rally. And here is Sacha Baron Cohen disguised as a country musician leading a crowd in this song. I love stuff like this.
So good.
Obama, what we gotta do? Inject him with the Wuhan flu. Inject him with the Wuhan flu. Let's hear it. Hillary Clinton, what we gotta do? Lock her up like we used to do. Lock her up like we used to do. Let's do that one more time. I'm gonna say it and you say it. Ready? Okay, this is the chorus. I'm gonna say 1, 2, and you're gonna say inject him with the Wuhan flu. You ready? Here we go. Obama, what we gonna do? Inject him with the Wuhan flu. Inject him with the Wuhan flu. Come on. Hillary Clinton, what we gonna do? Lock her up like we used to do. Like we used to do. Let's talk about much. Fauci don't know his head from his ass. He must be smoking grass. We got knocked down by I ain't lying, it ain't no jokes. Corona is a liberal hoax. Corona is a liberal hoax. What we gonna do there? Dr. Fauci, what we gonna
wish we could see the audience.
Inject him with the Wuhan flu. Inject him with the Wuhan flu. Come on. WHO, what we gonna do? Chop them up like the Saudis do. Chop them up like the Saudis do. What we gonna do to WHO? We're gonna inject them with the Wuhan flu? Or chop them up like the Saudis do? Okay, let's hear it. Who wants to inject them with the Wuhan flu? Who wants to chop them up like the Saudis do? Chop them up like the Saudis do. Okay, you ready? WHO.
Stop it there. Oh, my God.
Oh, my God. And there's...
People hear that? Like, what,
catchy.
Obama, what are we going to do? Inject him with the Wuhan flu? Oh, my God.
Oh, my God.
I used to have a bit. Comedy. I used to start it out, my bit, stand-up bit, in a thing that would ultimately lead people to Zig Heil me. And I could get the audience to do it like 2 or 3 times. And then, of course, they wouldn't laugh at anything I would do for the next 10 minutes.
Right. You have to
on stage.
Do it at the end.
Not a great way to do that. But I wish we could have seen the audience there. But, yeah.
There was another angle that I saw originally that I didn't hear the people. I was wondering if people were saying it back. It wasn't a big audience. It was a small audience because... they can't pull audiences right now.
There's some footage of the audience that we can play.
Yeah, let's just see some of the audience at the end there. I just maybe it'll be at least somewhat hopeful that it's not too huge. No.
Thank you very much. I got to be going. Thank you very much. I can't do the camera. Space. My grandfather was a Holocaust survivor. I can't hear you. That is not very polite. You're being unpolite. Okay.
Was he
I can't figure what's going on there. It's like I can't tell if that guy wearing the Israeli flag was coming in and calling Sacha Baron Cohen a racist.
Yeah.
Was he a plant?
I think he's like a Zionist cowboy is what he looked like to me.
Yeah.
Or like,
I wonder if that's not part. I mean, this is obviously I wonder if that's not part of the show, and they were trying to sort of like get it, like confuse everybody.
Right.
I imagine that Zionist, the guy wearing the Israeli flag, was also a part of whatever show is going on there with Sacha Baron Cohen. I can't wait for this. Wherever it is, I can't wait for it to come out. That's pretty crazy.
great song though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a good song. Very catchy.
Remix.
Inject him with the Wuhan flu.
Chop him up like that.
All right, one more entry into the, And I just don't know that it's a coincidence. I mean, this whole thing with Donald Trump, like, they are desperate, right? And now, like, Donald Trump's approval rating is now below 40% in some of these polls, which people thought there was no way he could fall below 40. I have always contended, like, based upon where George Bush is, that the floor is actually was like closer to like 32, 33% of like what the floor is for these people. But I didn't know that we could actually get there. Donald Trump is worried about his base. And so he is, it seems to me, is doing as much as he can to sort of like stoke that racist base, that nativist base, without being explicit, because he's got to now, there's got to be a lot more dog whistling going on. Here is your buddy, Kayleigh McEnany.
Would you stop it?
She is being asked a question by Ryan Lizza. And, they're dancing around this stuff. And so Lizza asks her a very straightforward question. And this is the kind of questions that just should be asked, but of the president. But your buddy McEnany tries to answer it. Here you go.
There's a national conversation going on right now about the proper place of symbols of the Confederacy, statues, memorials, names, and the president has repeatedly inserted himself into this debate. And I think a lot of people are trying to understand what his view of memorializing the Confederacy is and the proper place of the Confederate flag. So a couple questions. One, does President Trump believe that it was a good thing that the South lost the Civil War? And then two, is he interested in following NASCAR's example and banning the Confederate flag at his own events?
Well, your first question is absolutely absurd. He's proud of the United States of America. Second, with regard to our statues, Americans oppose tearing down our statues. There's a Harvard-Harris poll released just last week that shows 60% of respondents said the statues should remain, and 71% said local governments should block groups from physically destroying the statues. So he stands on the side of preserving our history.
The question is actually about the Confederate flag at his rallies. Is he interested in banning the Confederate flag at his rallies?
That would be a question for his campaign, but look, this president's focused on taking action, on fixing problems. It's why he had his executive order just a few weeks ago to keep our streets safe and secure. That's where his focus lies. And
there you go. She's good at her job. She's good at her job.
She went to Harvard Law School. She learned
Did she
that
really?
debate. She did. Yep.
I didn't realize
2016, while she was doing all that debate, she was also in law school. She's sharp, just not sharp enough.
Nothing like using a Harvard law education to go up and to parse questions regarding the racism of your boss.
Yeah. Because he believes in the United
That's a
States
Harvard
of America.
Law School,
That's where we are right now. Like, does the
Harvard
president
Law
believe?
School education well spent.
Yes.
That's nuts. All right, let's go to the phones. Calling from a 480 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello?
Hello? Who's this?
Hello? My name's Sean. I'm calling from Mesa, Arizona.
Sean from Mesa, Arizona.
Thank you, young. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I don't hear you that well. I just wanted to thank all of you young people for the hard work you do. I'm an old woman calling from Mesa. I do think the Mormons are not going to go for Trump this time around. So, the light at the end of the tunnel. And then I have a son that lives and works in Korea. So it's very interesting to get his take on how the Koreans are watching us and what's going on. Initially, when this whole corona thing happened, I thought I was worried for him. And then he quickly abated my concerns. He said, look, they've gone to online schooling. We're, tracked. We're monitored. And so now I'm like, he's safer there than we are here.
Yeah.
And then the other thing about Trump is all you have to understand is narcissistic fixes and narcissistic triggers. That's all you need to understand about everything that he does or says. And then there's not much that psychologists don't understand about us, right? And like foreign governments, they get psychological profiles on, foreign leaders they're meeting with. So everybody that's handled Trump has had a handle on him. we are the ones that look like fools to the rest of the world. And we have to stop behaving as if we are exceptional, because we're not. Our system is just as vulnerable to failure as every other world system has been throughout history. So again, I just want to thank you guys for the hard work you do. I am totally plugged into like the streaming medias now. I no longer watch the mainstream stuff because I do just see it as such a like you just said, lazy. They're just lazy, and their talking points, and they just don't speak to me anymore. I feel badly that my generation has fucked it up for you guys for, like you said, like 30 years, for the judges and things. So keep up the good work. Don't lose heart. I think the young people are mobilized in Arizona. We do have vote by mail. So, we have some things that I'm hoping will go well for us. And again, thank you for your hard work.
All right. Well, thank you for the call.
You
may be, I don't know, maybe I don't think I'm as young as you think I am. But if you're still able.
Well, and I'm with Saul. I like fruity.
Oh, you like
but
the fruity?
Anyway,
do you like that?
You guys have kept me going. As I get older, and like you've already touched on, you lose your relevancy and all of those psychological stages of human life and behavioral science. Just keep it up and don't lose heart and, love life.
All right.
Take care.
Appreciate the call. Very nice. Very nice sentiments. I appreciate
sweet.
that very much.
And she thinks you're young.
And she thinks I'm young. So I am doubly excited by that call. That is, all right, let's talk about this, because this is sort of just example number, 1,005,036, and how screwed up our whole, like our patent system, our medical delivery system, our pharmaceutical policy, like everything, like so much when we're not in these sort of insane times, so much of this breaks down to like externalizing like who pays the external costs for something, who gets to reap the benefit of exploiting something, right? I mean, like that dynamic explains so much of what's going on. I mean, it's so much of the dynamic that's problematic in our society is a function of too few being able to exploit the value that is created by the many. And, value that is created by the context that is developed by society, values that is created by, things as explicitly as taxes, or, just sort of like, the social compact. And then that value being hoarded by a narrow few. So we have there is a therapy, one of the therapies that they have found is somewhat helpful for treating coronavirus. One of them, we spoke about this the other day, and I got a very nice email actually from a doctor who said, really appreciate your breakdown of that. I can't even remember what the name of it is, but that steroid. And I was like, I guess that was not an email. That was an IM yesterday. I thought it was a joke. But there is that other steroid that they're finding. If you are extremely ill, it cuts down on the fatality rate. There's another treatment that is for the opposite end of the spectrum, where you're not deathly ill, but it diminishes the length of time that you are ill with COVID if you are suffering from it by about 4 or 5 days. Not nothing, helpful and important, because it gets people out of the hospital quicker, saves people money, opens up space for even more ill people, right? I mean, that's the value of this. It was essentially invented by Gilead Sciences. It's called Remdesivir. I don't know why they make it so hard to pronounce. They made this, I think they developed it they invented it about 10 years ago. They were looking for treatments for hepatitis C. It didn't go anywhere. They didn't spend any money on developing it. Later, they realized this could be an antiviral drug, but we don't want to spend the money on developing it. So they partnered with the U.S. government. The U.S. government provided $70 million, at least, to develop the drug. And it's been developed. It's found to be, like I say, somewhat helpful for this. The Clinical and Economic Review, Institute for Clinical and Economic Review, said Gilead could cover its costs by distributing the drug for as little as $1 to $60 per dose, or $100 to $160 per dose if all of the company's 2020 costs are taken into account. All of the company's costs, not just for the drug, but for everything. They have set the price at $520 per dose. And apparently you need something like 6.5 doses.
What?
6 doses to deal with it. So it's about a $3,500 course of action. Here is the CEO, Daniel O'Day, asked, why do taxpayers have to pay 30% more for the COVID drug? Oh, incidentally, not only did the U.S. taxpayer pay for all the trials and whatnot, they are selling the drug at about 70% the cost overseas, ostensibly to allow other countries to have access to it. Here he's being asked by Meg Terrell on CNBC about why is it that we invested in it and we don't get a break on it.
Tell us about your decision to set the list price 30% higher for U.S. insurers than for government payers. Some are pointing out that U.S. taxpayers helped fund the NIH trial supporting the data behind remdesivir's approval or emergency use authorization. Why set it 30% higher for U.S. insurance companies?
Right. So for everybody's knowledge, for every medicine in the United States, there are always 2 prices. There's a government price, and then there's a price for private insurers. That's part of the system in the United States, which allows for required and expected discounts to the government off of every medicine accordingly. What I want to assure you, Meg, is that at both of those prices, we focused on making sure that all patients would have access. And based upon, this price level, based upon the immediate savings to the healthcare system that this medicine provides, based upon programs from the government, whether you're covered by a private insurer, whether you're covered by a government insurer, whether you're uninsured with COVID-19, there will not be an issue with access for remdesivir.
Unless you can't afford it.
I just want to focus on that idea that there are 2 different prices a little bit, because you are saying that Gilead needed to take a different approach during a pandemic to pricing a medicine. But did the middlemen, the insurers, the folks that are benefiting from that difference between the net price and the gross price, they don't see the pandemic as a time when they need to be thinking differently about drug pricing?
Oh, my God.
Well, I think the community at large is definitely coming together to think about how to make sure that patients with COVID in the hospital system are well covered. And that's true from the government programs to the way the private insurers have approached this, to the way the CARES program is there for the uninsured patient populations, to the way that the research-based pharmaceutical industry has programs to make sure that if anybody needs support for their medicines, they receive it. So I think the system comes together. The system, is such that you do still have these 2 prices in the United States. But most importantly, I think the way that we price this assures that patients will have access.
How does it assure? How?
Well, first off, the whole thing, that whole segment, is a complete fig leaf. Like, they're going to focus on the 2 different prices. Her second question was literally, "You've been really great about this. Why do you feel like other entities that are profiting off this haven't been?" Look, the bottom line is, we put that $70 million in. We should own a significant chunk of that drug, period, end of story. And by we, I mean the U.S. government, the U.S. population. As soon as you get $1 to develop any of this stuff, there needs to be price controls on it.
Absolutely.
There needs to be, like, you want to make a 10% profit, 15% profit on a drug? Fine. That's it. Capped, period. It's just absurd that they're going to get away with this. And the big selling point is like, but we are making it 30% cheaper for developed nations so that everybody can have this drug. Well, the whole thing starts out at like 400% over cost.
It's not reduced; it's inflated. It's a
Right.
Ponzi scheme playing with your tax dollars. You know, it's defund the pharmaceutical companies. That's what I want to say.
I mean, Elizabeth Warren had a plan to produce generic drugs in situations where the drugs hit a certain threshold of cost or whatnot. We got to do it across the board. You cannot have, our patent system is also completely screwed. Like this is, it's not enough to have Medicare for all be the negotiating these prices. We need to have price controls on these things. If a drug like this is important enough to dealing with a pandemic, then it's important enough for the government to own it, to appropriate it.
Absolutely. Has like Senator Sanders or Warren said anything about this?
Sanders has been out and saying that this is, like criminal, his usual thing. But he also puts the lie to the idea of access. He's like, yeah, anyone's going to be able to get a bill for this, the $5,000.
Exactly.
No, we'll charge it and it'll be fine for us.
Right.
Well, that's the neoliberal talking point. It's fed straight by the pharmaceutical industry. It's about access.
Yep. Everybody can buy it.
Yep. You just might lose your house over it.
Big run on yachts, though. Did you know that? Number of yachts has doubled. The order for filling yachts has gone through the roof. Unbelievable.
You can build your own little, island. That's another thing the crypto guys did, by the way. They bought this ginormous cruise ship, and they'd float there with a hospital on board and little businesses where they could, there's the different tax laws and just law in general.
I heard about this.
And they would float from island to island and, quote, escaping climate change.
Well, I guess, as the sea level rises, so too does their boat.
This is also Gilead's, this is their business model. Like the Trump administration has sued them over not paying royalties to HHS for infringed upon patents.
Oh, that's interesting.
And for Truvada, which can cost $20,000 a year in America and costs $60 a year in Africa, a generic of it. So really great people at that company.
Yeah.
Makes Shkreli look like
we've all come together to profit off the pandemic. It's really great to see the system come together like this and everybody make a buttload of cash off of this pandemic. Mm-hmm. Calling from a 503 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Luis from Portland.
Oh, you got to turn it down, dude.
Oof.
How's it going? Luis from Portland.
Luis from Portland. What's on your mind?
Well.
All right, listen. You gotta stop yelling into your phone. You gotta back off it, whatever you're talking on.
Is that better?
Try it now.
Is that better?
Yeah, a little bit.
All right. The Taibbi piece, and I think it's related to the Greenwald crystal ball discussion you guys had yesterday.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know. There just seems this weird, when it comes to economics and free speech, there's this weird sort of small cabal of people, it seems like, that has this sort of fetishization of like this right-wing populism. And one of the things that ends up happening is that brown and black people get thrown under the bus.
Right.
Yeah.
And so with Taibbi's piece, there's like just these egregious mischaracterizations that begin his piece that just conveniently like leave out that like Lee was pushing a very racist canard that any journalist worth their salt has no business discussing in the manner that Lee Fang was.
All right, listen, hold on. Let me listen. Your phone is just not good. But let me, I know what you're talking about. We'll talk about it with you off. Like I would rather be able to actually like discuss it with you, but your phone's just not, we're not going to be able to do that with your phone. Cause it's breaking up.
Really that bad? I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, it's not your fault. Sometimes this, I don't know exactly what the deal is, why that happens with some people, but basically look, stay on the line, but you're only going to be able to say so much. I'm sorry about this, but basically what you're talking about, just so the people don't understand, is that Lee Fong over at The Intercept, he interviewed, I think he did an interview with a black guy who was in, I can't remember where it was, but in the wake of like the protests and the George Floyd protests, who said that, you know, we've got a problem in the, you know, with black on black violence in some of these areas, and we don't necessarily want all the cops out. I'm doing like a Reader's Digest version of this, and Fong, you know, tweeted it out, and he got hammered by people at The Intercept. Now, I've, you know,
reporters at The Intercept.
Can I interject something really quick?
Yeah, just
it's not just that time. This is years that Lee's been doing. I'm just asking questions regarding black on black crime.
Right. Well, that was the frustration they had internally. It was like the other reporters noticed a pattern and articulated that. That was the frustration. It's the whataboutism. That's the, you know.
Yeah, let me.
It's worse than that.
Okay, all right, listen. Honestly, I gotta let you go. It's like it's just your phone is just not good. I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you, but try and call back, and we'll do this conversation another time. I'll touch on it briefly, but I get what you're saying. I mean, I'm sorry. I apologize.
I'm sorry.
God. I don't know why that happens, but sometimes, I don't know, like people's phones, some people sound great on this. Some people call and they don't. Listen, my experience of Lee's work has not been like that. And, but to be fair, I also haven't, you know, paid too much attention to it, but I take him, I think he is I mean, I think he is you know, genuinely was addressing some issues. And look, there is a lot of research and there's a lot of work that's been done in terms of under policing, or I should put this way, lack of over policing of black and brown communities, a lack of detective work. You have a lot of unsolved crimes, as it were. And so there's like more policing and not enough servicing of these communities. And I don't know, maybe I just don't know the story. I do know that there were parts of Taibbi's piece that were really just sort of like a mess, I thought. And if you're going to, you know, indict reporters and journalists for being inaccurate, you got to make sure that, you know, you're presenting it from a piece that's been sort of buttoned up more. But there's differences between this notion of like, there are some free speech, you know, Glenn Greenwald has always been a free speech absolutist. I personally am not. I think there are restrictions on free speech. I am not,
especially if it's propped up by corporations. One side's propped up by corporations or other folks who have an agenda, and the other side is not. We don't live in an absolute democracy.
That's absolutely right. And you know, like for instance, YouTube has bumped, has shut down Molyneux's thing and Richard Spencer's show and David Duke, and I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with the size that YouTube is. Mm-hmm. And I just don't think there is a solution to this. Even like Parler, apparently, which is the right-wing Twitter, they're banning people now on the left. I mean, I think like, look, we should not have such dominant players in social media. The problem is, like, are they publishers or are they a service? If they're publishers, you wouldn't force them to carry every story, as it were. But also, if they're not publishers, then you can't, in any way, like, hold them to account for anything. Like, what can you not put on these things? We're not going to restrict access to, in terms of children. How would we do that? I mean, I think there's just like, we need
editors for a reason. I'm sorry, I just don't buy it from Glenn Greenwald, with all due respect to him. I think that what happens with some folks on the left, who I deeply respect and I agree with probably at 95% of the issues, which is a lot, what I think is they're taking their personal feelings and this is the problem, is when our personal feelings about being attacked by the neoliberals gets in the way of our logic. And ultimately, The Intercept has editors. So just from the get-go, ultimately, The Intercept is funded by a billionaire. So don't tell me that you're democratizing information or you believe in absolute democratization and of free speech when you aren't even a product of that and you don't even exercise that.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that Greenwald's free speech absolutism, certainly even predates the development of these platforms, but I'll also say he's definitely on the left side of the spectrum, but he's never, I don't think he was ever as much of a leftist as people projected onto him. I don't think his politics are particularly leftist. I mean, I think he is, sort of like a left-leaning libertarian in many respects. My
frustration with the Matt Taibbi thing was you have to kind of like separate leftism from anti-establishment. It's an anti-establishment thing, and sometimes anti-establishment, may kind of push up against like being a contrarian. It's like the whole, Michael Tracy's an extreme version of this. At what point are you just being a contrarian that's actually hurting the leftist movement by not addressing very clear racial tensions or delving deep enough? I mean, what Li Fang, I think, was attempting to do in some of these pieces was address a very real thing, but maybe, assign that to somebody who comes from one of those communities or has done work in those communities. It's like, there's a missing children issue, for instance, in Black and brown communities where it's just underreported, underinvestigated. I mean, exactly what you're saying. But, if you're going to be a critic of these systems, bring somebody in who actually has some weight, who actually has done that work, who actually has done those investigations, because it was very loose and it came off as being a little provocative for the sake of being provocative.
Yeah, I do think that there is some, I think earning stuff on a beat is important.
Right.
I mean, and I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
All right. We got time for one more phone call. Apologies to the last caller in regards to the phone. Final call of the day, calling from a 787 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Daniel from Puerto Rico.
Daniel from Puerto Rico.
787. What's up?
How is it going? Thank you for taking me for last call. I called in because I knew that Nomiki was going to be on the show today. She's been speaking absolute truth. Thank you, Nomiki. Puerto Rican living on the island, it's very hard to get leftist opinions across when you see a lot of people who are allies tweeting statehood for Puerto Rico. Like, I appreciate Nomiki's nuance in talking about the politics on the island.
Thank you. I feel like I wasn't even nearly as nuanced as it is, but I appreciate that. It's only from talking to folks on the island. So whatever I can do.
Yeah, but frankly, there's a need for English-speaking voices about these subjects. And to get to what I was calling about, two things, if I'm allowed the time.
Go ahead.
Related to COVID, Puerto Rico's numbers have been difficult to ascertain. The PNP government, the statehood party, has been extremely opaque with its numbers. They did the same thing with Maria. We fear the same thing now. But different. Something I've noticed is different over here on the island to what I see on the States is that we don't have the culture of anti-mask. We don't have the masks are oppression. We don't have this idea that like there is a extreme Christian right thing of the United States that, or let's say right wing or libertarian or you can't tell me what to do type attitude thing that seems to be exclusively a phenomena of the United States. And our inability to control our COVID crisis really comes from the fact that we can't close our airports to the United States.
Right.
Like we are the last tourist destination left. And a lot of Americans, when they come down, they're the ones who have the no mask attitude.
Oh.
They populate a lot of the west side. It's just this phenomena that we are trying to manage and something that I'd like to spread awareness of. Like our COVID crisis is our focal point is the airport right now. Like the government is starting to take measures to require a 3-day previous test to come into the island.
Oh, interesting.
But just maybe 2 weeks ago or a week ago, I have no idea how time works anymore. We had like this famous or like crypto libertarian who documented their coming to the island and very proudly abstaining from any tests or like
people are
not
effing
accepting
insane.
any tests at the airport and documenting like how he smuggled his weed in his pocket or
Are
some
you
shit,
kidding
or
me?
like
Oh my God.
yes, like publicly documenting it on their Facebook, coming to the island to basically laugh at our curfews or like ignore our curfews because they're God-given American rights.
Well, Daniel, I'm sorry. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, it's, I need a vacation. Like, I just like, honestly, like just sort of the number of people in this country who just bathe in ignorance. And then like, it's not even bathing. Like at this point, it's like it's like my kid bathing in ignorance. Cause a kid goes in, he pees in his tub and then he got no problem putting the water in his mouth and spouting it out. That's like what it feels like. It's just like that, but it's with ignorance. Daniel, hang in there.
Unfortunate to see.
Can I ask Daniel a question real quick? Just real quick. Daniel, what I found so interesting, like when I first started reporting on the island's politics, was just it's such a political island. Like for a place that doesn't have a vote on the mainland, it's most people vote. It's a very just very active. I mean, everybody has an opinion on politics, a very informed opinion on politics. Do you think that's kind of where that mask, and like you said, there's no right-wing Christian agenda or whatever that is, the libertarian Christian agenda?
There is, but there's a white element or like an American element involved.
Yeah.
There's a libertarian aspect to not being told what to do with their bodies that I feel like Puerto Ricans, having had no autonomy ever, have always sort of like understood that we don't have that freedom. We don't have that USA freedom.
Right. It's fascinating.
I think everybody has really strong political opinions, but there are also the same or parallel conspiracy type religious rights, like the kind of thing that you see in South America, the type of conservative Christianity. There is a lot of that.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
The
Daniel,
Ruben Diaz
appreciate the call. We got to jump. End the show, folks.
All right.
Thanks for the call.
Thanks for taking the call. Have a great day.
All right, folks. That's it for calls. Apologies if you were hanging on the line. I know we had a lot of people who were. We got a couple more IMs, then we're going to get out of here. Bunker Inspector. Hey, Sam, why can't international listeners buy from the shop? Have you ever considered Cedar with Cedar, your YouTube carpentry show? Probably get free tools and maybe even reach a few Trump voters. Maybe down the road, that is what I'll do. Maybe that's what I'll do in my semi-retirement. We're working on the international shipping. Gulfstream 2, an early overlooked Carl Reiner movie, is Where's Papa? A little dated, but worth the watch. Ruth Gordon, George Siegel, among others. Missing Link. Yesterday, SCOTUS also allowed the abortion gag rule to continue abroad. Yes. Cat Loving Kami. Hey, Sam, crew, thanks for plugging the anti-fascist rally last week. We outnumbered the white nationalists at the State House by an obscene amount. It's a little disturbing to stand across from Adam Waffen kid flying the Sonderrad flag behind a line of Boston cops. Apparently, these Nazi punks will be back on July 4th. We need to turn out once again, love and solidarity. Rave Dubin. Did you cover the Seattle mayor calling on the city council to take action against Kashima Swant? No, I didn't hear that. Shama Swant, we will, I'll look into that tomorrow. Dr. Chaos MD, I know most of the focus surrounding COVID has been on the rate of fatality, but to your knowledge, is anyone collecting data on how many people who survived COVID coming away with potentially irreparable damage to their bodies like scarring and lung tissues? I know there are people who are tracking this, but I just don't think there's enough time and data yet to come up with this. Also, can you remind me the email address to contact to get hooked up with phone banking for Jessica Rain? Kyle@fans.fm. Kyle@fans.fm. Me too. Sam, I have a couple of things to apologize for. I've been critical of your pronunciation of Nomiki's name. It's come to my attention that Nomiki goes by Nomi on Twitter. Also, I have been advocating for Nomiki to host Thursday show. I was wrong to think that she was interested in that role. I will immediately stop support someone else for that role.
What? I didn't know about this.
This goes to Glenn Greenwald makes $450,000 a year for a billionaire-funded news organization pretending he's anti-establishment, and it's a joke. He's a libertarian who hates the Democratic Party more than he values democracy itself. He's smart enough to know what he's saying to Robinson was complete BS. Need to accept that Glenn is a bad actor. I'm not quite there on that. Sorry. Patrick from Kansas City. Update from last time Nomiki was on. After my boss told me he didn't want to get people tested, my dad started to get a fever and went to ER to get tested. Long story short, my mom, dad, and I all have COVID. Oy. Oof. I told my boss he should test everyone since no one at work wears the mask correctly. He blew me off and hung up. I just hope the people we deliver to will be okay. Oh, God.
What state is that?
Kansas City. Kansas City, maybe Missouri, I guess. I'm not sure. Cuomo building Alex JS. Cuomo building a literal monument to his hubris and failures dealing with coronavirus. That's so good. Maybe worse than 90% of the things Trump has done. He sounded like Trump even. That's a monument to avoidable deaths. Of course, he's doing this rather than dealing with the coming eviction crisis.
Yep.
I assume he's going to put that COVID monument in his man cave. All right, 3 more. Ryan Cole. Cuomo could have at least had his mountain model become a science report volcano. Tony from Toronto. Cuomo in front of a mountain accomplished banner. And final, I am get a call screener, someone who can tell people they're about to get on air. How about Josh from Chicago? Blazing Saddles will be funny until race is solved. Blazing Saddles, pretty good, too. That's true. Nomi, Brendan, Matt, thank you. Good show, guys.
We'll
see you too tomorrow. Nomi, we'll see you next week. People should check out your show. Patreon.com, The Nomiki Show, and on YouTube.com, The Nomiki Show. All right, folks. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie.